up, everybody? Welcome to We'll Throw the After Party. It's everyone's favorite time of the week where we break down the last week in pop culture. We talk about some of what we've been watching. Right now, we're watching Moon Knight episode 5, and we have a special guest this week here to join us to talk all about everything we got from this week's episode. And you might notice someone is missing from the screen. Sly might appear at any point this evening. Unfortunately, their internet is not working. Not their fault. So everyone cross your fingers that the internet gets back up and running for Sly and they can join us at some point over the next 2 hours. If not, Sly will be returning next week. And as you know, Sly is a deaf, queer Jane Austen fan on the internet, so please go support them everywhere at SlyCloneMC. And other than that, we want to say a big hello and shout out to everyone who is watching the replay because they're participating in the Agbo No Sleep Till Film Challenge. We cannot wait to see what you come up with. We know we have some friends that are competing and watching, and we're so excited for you. So if you're watching the replay, kick back, relax, enjoy the next 2 hours, and let's just quickly introduce ourselves in case this is your first time here. I'm Liz. I'm producer Liz everywhere on the internet. On Twitter, I'm producer Liz with 2 Z's or Z's, however you say that letter. And I talk about PR and pop culture predictions. It's been a bit of a wild week for me personally with all the Harry Styles and Taylor Swift drama that's gone down because of CinemaCon. So I have a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to process here together. And of course, we have some big Harry's house announcements that I'm going to rant about that I've been holding off on for days. So big show for me personally. I have a lot of emotions that I'm going to express and process for the very first time this week with you all live. So I'm really glad the internet's going to be here to witness it. And I'm here with Marissa and Alexis, of course. Marissa, I'll make you go next. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm so excited for our special guest. But I'm also sad that Sly's not here. I feel like we're replacing them and that was not supposed to be the plan. Yeah. I'm ready. I'm good.
You're good. And it's a big week for you as well. Multiverse of Madness promos have dropped. It is the week of Wanda.
It is the week of Wanda.
Ring the bell. It's the week of Wanda. And as Eric's putting in the chat here, let me hear your Multiverse of Madness post-credit predictions or else. We have a whole Multiverse of Madness prediction segment at the end of the show. It is in the infamous show doc, so don't you worry. We will get there and share all the tea of what we think is coming next week.
Oh yeah. There was no question what the background was going to be this week. I'm only Wanda on the brain for the next 7 days. At least.
You know, Love on the Brain by Rihanna. It's like that, but
it is
Wanda. Not Love, Wanda. Exact same. Speaking of backgrounds, I want to transition over to Alexis and tell everyone about you, but also the amazing background that you're rocking this week because it's got particular significance to our show.
Yes. Hi, I'm Alexis at Alexis Blake Reads Comics everywhere on the internet. And this is a vintage star map. So it's a map of the constellations from 1970. I also teach in this same spot, so I have to have something behind me. And this is what I went with. But it is very moon nighty, as Elizabeth pointed out. So that's what that is.
Oh, Liz is saying hi to TikTok. Hi, everyone on TikTok.
Hi.
Sorry, I muted myself so that I wouldn't have to say it twice, but then there I was. Alexis, I also have to ask, as usual, how are the cats?
The cats are good. We actually had an incident yesterday. Yes, the day before yesterday. But I left the house to run errands, and I have child locks on all of my cabinets. Don't have children, just have cats, but I have child locks. And I came home and Tommy had engineered the cabinet lock off the cabinet, opened them, and they ate about 6 days worth of treats. And then we'll sick all the house. Yes. And they get very limited quantities of things because they have a bunch of allergies and stuff. So they're doing a little bit better today. They're still very, full and sleepy. And I'm having to try to figure out, some sort of lock that won't let them into the cabinet. These were
it's a great callback to a previous episode where you shared that you've had them break through multiple locks already.
Yeah, an ongoing thing. These were you had to push them in and pull to.
Oh yeah.
pull the lock to get it to release. And I guess he wedged his paw through enough that he just popped it over the handle, like the knob on the door. So
Smart cat.
know.
It's because you have that. It's because you have the like toy feeder thing. He's getting too smart.
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna have to try actual lock and key next time and see if that works.
You need a master code, 12 digits.
Yeah.
To spin the whole thing. I just want to read some of the TikTok comments coming in on my end. Sarah Setlist says, Liz, I just watched your Get Ready With Me. Oh my God, you made it. Sarah, bestie, let me tell you, we almost did not make it. It was chaos right up until the moment I hit let's start the show. So thank you for watching. And I really need to figure out, I need to get a new phone because my current phone keeps breaking on me. But if I do get a new phone, I'm going to actually do a time lapse of the 10 minutes before the show starts, because that's when the true chaos goes down. And that's the part that never makes it into the show because the TikTok gets set up. Eric saying, the way I made it to TikTok quick enough for you to say hi to TikTok. I love that for you, bestie. Reminder, if you're watching over on TikTok, you can stay here or come over to YouTube and Twitch and see all the graphics for tonight. And I want to say hello to all of our familiar faces hanging out with us here in the chat. Claw135, I'm the first for once. Claw, I'm so proud of you. Sometimes you show up late for the show. So congratulations, you were here on time, ready for that bell to ding that we were live. Hey to Sylvan. Hey to JJ. I know there was a live this week. This is the second time this week that Sly tries to get on a live and then something goes wrong. So hopefully a better week next week for Sly. We'll let them tell that story next week. Hello to Leah P. I have to give Leah a big shout out because she is the only one that correctly guessed which song on Harry's House is going to be my bias. If you follow me on Instagram, that was on my story. Lots of guesses came in. Leah was the only one that knew. We had a little chat about it. So shout out to Leah, who, only one here that truly knows me, but everyone's going to know me after tonight. You'll all be able to guess my bias moving forward, I think, once you hear my analysis. If you missed off the top of the show, Sly might appear at any moment, but currently their internet's down. So we will see if Sly appears. Melody making fun of the way I say process. Is that the Canadian accent in me jumping out? Is that the problem here? I think I need to make a list of the words that I don't think I'm saying differently that y'all hear and are like, what is wrong with her? So yeah, keep shouting them out as we go through the show. Before we get to everyone's favorite time of the week when we rant about the week, we have a very special guest that I'm about to bring up, and I'm going to give them a moment to take a deep breath before I bring them up, because I know that helps. I'm not just going to put your camera on. We have invited someone who we deeply respect, is a friend of ours, who is watching Moon Knight and doing a fantastic series on Moon Knight and Jewish representation in the MCU and their personal connections to both the MCU, the Moon Knight story, and how they feel about some of the choices, I suppose I'll say, in this week's episode. So we're so happy to have Bunky here with us. Bunky, welcome to the after party.
Hello.
Yay! How convenient that you're taking Sly's literal spot on the screen while Sly is not here. You might get bumped to a different spot if Sly does show up. But hi, how are you? Tell the people who you are if they don't know you.
Hello. First of all, I want to clarify, I can never replace Sly. Second of all, oh my goodness.
Sorry, you're also live on TikTok now too. I
Okay.
should have told you that.
My sound just jumped on for some reason.
Oh yeah, it goes straight up to 100%.
Okay.
Turn
set
that
now.
sucker down.
I turned it down. Why is it back?
It
Okay.
won't go all the way down. It'll still be on the yeah.
You have to
Oh, lovely.
if you pull down your lock screen and actually take your finger and drag your sound down, sometimes that, do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Also, we can't see your video. That's okay.
I don't know why.
Okay, you gotta go to the
Technical
multi-guest. You gotta go to the multi-guest and then click on your
Oh, is that
camera.
me?
Okay. Camera.
No, Bunky has to do it themselves.
Okay. Maybe now the sound will go down. If it doesn't go down, I'm just going to leave the TikTok so it stops being a nuisance.
Okay.
Okay. Are we good?
I can't see you.
I can't see.
I hit the button.
Welcome to the chaos.
Truly.
Hi to our dear friend. This must be fake me, who is our absolutely iconic. If you don't follow Lindsay's series about the Eiffel Tower, it's a little bit 18 plus, but it is my favorite series on the platform. It is so funny. Thank you for watching with us on TikTok.
I also have to
evening.
say, Lindsay is the #1 fan of the Hair in the MCU series.
Shout out Lindsay.
Okay.
I was just saying this before we went live. It's so funny when you're like, as much as I create TikToks, I'm a viewer of TikTok, right? I'm a viewer of content. I feel like we all can relate to that. And it's so funny when like you admire someone else's work and you're like, wow, like they're so funny and they're so smart and they're so talented. And then you get to talk to them. And you're like, wow, we are all just a whole bunch of like content creator nerds that like are the exact same kind of personality. It's so funny when you break down that wall. And Bunky, you are someone that I think all of us had like such a connotation of like, wow, Bunky's brilliant, like Bunky's so wise, like, and you are, but also you're like the most hilarious person I've ever met, and we have the exact same taste in TV shows. So it's just super funny to like, for anyone that does not know Bunky is exactly the same as what you get on TikTok, plus even more funny and hilarious and wonderful. So we're so happy to have you this evening.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with all of you.
Yeah.
My name is Bunky. You can find me at Bunky, Bunkyy, 3 Ys on TikTok with an underscore on Instagram because somebody else took my username and I'm still salty about it.
That's so rude.
I talk about the educational power of movies and TV over on TikTok, and Jewish representation and queer representation specifically, because those are sort of my little intersections with that. And I'm excited to get to do the same tonight with some of my friends on here.
Yeah, what a strong intro. Round of applause for
Really.
Bunky. That is where we trip up every week ourselves. Like, I've been doing the show now for a year, and every week I'm like, I don't know who I am. And you just came on, you're like, I know exactly who I am. Let me lay out the script for you so smooth.
I told you I planned for it.
We wrote bios for ourselves, and we can't remember to say them on the show. We're like,
spent
what
2
did I write?
days.
Literally the other day, Sly was like, are we ever going to do anything with those bios? Like, I don't know.
I think it was more of an exercise in like self-reflection. I also feel like I've never thought, Bunky, of your username as how many extra Ys? 3?
There's 3 Ys.
It's like Bunky existential crisis, like Bunky why.
It wasn't always that. I changed it, and it's because somebody else just has. It's a whole thing. I've spent way too long trying to figure out my username situation.
I'm kind of obsessed. Listen, Bunky with 3 Ys. I think you only have. No, it is Bunky with 3 Ys. I was thinking 4. Anyway, doesn't matter. We're all here. We're ready to rant. Bunky has joined us. Very exciting times. Hopefully, Sly does not appear halfway through rants, or else we're going to get. I'm just going to add Sly in, and they're going to have to just pick up wherever they end up in the stream. So that's how we do this segment, folks. If you're new here and you don't know what's up, we're about to do our rant segment where we each have 2 minutes to share our rant of the week, but we continually cut each other off in 30-second intervals. It's a little bit chaotic, it's a little bit loud, and it's a whole lot of fun. Before we get started, let's all share what we are ranting about. I will be talking about the Harry's House track list that came out this week, and I'm going to briefly just pull up an image. I know it's very hard to read, but this is all we have, and I was too lazy to retype it. So we're going to be talking about this mess of a graphic and the songs on it. Marissa?
I think everybody here already knows what I'm talking about because I've been very vocal about it this week. But I am talking about the Wicked movie.
Shout out to Marissa's Twitter, as usual. Marissa always highlights what she's ranting about, not out of choice, but out of she rants about something on Twitter and then decides that's going to be her rant of the week on the show. So a preview, if you follow Marissa on Twitter, you know it's coming. I love it. Bunky, what are you ranting about?
I am going to be ranting about the way that Star Wars came to be and sort of like a brief life story of George Lucas.
In 2 minutes, folks. It's going to be a masterclass. I'm
excited. Was specifically for Sly, but Sly is not here. So I'm still doing it because I don't know what else I'd rant about, but hopefully it goes well.
Sly will enjoy in post and maybe leave some comments in the chat as they watch. Alexis, what are you ranting about this week?
Marvel posted a video on their social media of all of the like cat panels that they've dropped in comics, and I'm unhappy with it as per usual. So that is what I'll be talking about.
Shocking that Alexis is not a fan of what Marvel's doing with cats. It's never been said before on the show.
No, I've never heard that.
I've never heard that come out of Alexis before. Shocking information. Throwback to the highlight reel of a few weeks ago that we did where like Alexis talks about cats like for half of the highlights. Anywho, oh, my screen is glitching. Hold on a moment, folks. Okay, it stopped. That's great. Let's do our rants. Everyone take a deep breath before we get started. All right, folks.
I don't need a deep breath. I'm ready.
She's ready to go.
I'm centered. I've had days to plan.
I'm going to make you go first. Do you want to go first?
No,
Marissa's
it's your
first.
turn.
Ready?
No,
3, 2,
no,
1,
no.
start!
John Chu announced on Tuesday that the Wicked movie is going to be 2 parts, and I think that is a very bad idea. I would like to start by laying out my qualifications to discuss this topic. I have seen Wicked 5 times. I've seen it twice on Broadway and 3 times on the national tour, both the first national tour and the second national tour. I've seen 5 different Elphabas, including Jessica Vosk. Thank you very much. I own a copy of the Grimmery. I have a poster. I have a purse
In this
made
world,
out of
it's
the
just
Wicked
us and apparently no graphic designers. I don't know what Harry was thinking posting this absolute tragedy of a preview this week. There's all kinds of conspiracies around it. But my question this week on my Instagram stories was, which song did y'all think was going to be my bias, meaning my favorite song? I did not pre-pick a number on the track list. I don't believe in that. But y'all had some wrong theories. So we're going to unpack why you're wrong. And then we're going to shout out Leah and the correct answer at the end of the rant.
George Lucas was born on May 14th, 1944. And as he grew up, he was a fan of Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon science fiction TV shows on reruns in the 40s, which meant that he was also really into like big spaceship type things. And he was like, all right, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be a race car driver. He never once was like, I'm going to go into film. But he did have a lot of friends in high school who were going to go into film. But because he was going to be a race car driver, he was like, I don't have to try in school because I'm not going to college because I'm going to be a race car driver. But
So this week, Marvel posted a video on their social media of all of the cat panels that they have included in recent comics, including those from the not only Alpine Infinity comic and the not Alpine at all Marvel Meow book. And it felt very similar, like I had a very similar vibe to when they feature women for 60 seconds in an effort to try to convince me that that's been enough representation over the last 50 years. And it's not for women and it's not for cats. And so basically all that we saw.
So what I don't talk about this a lot because like, I don't know. It's a deep part of my soul that it is just a constant for me. But Wicked is very important to me. It's the first Broadway show I ever saw. It's the show that like got me into musical theater as a genre. Like, well, not as a genre, but as an art form, I guess. Because I understood like, you know, musical theater and movie musicals and Disney movies and that kind of thing. But like Broadway as a concept was really introduced to me.
If you didn't know Marissa was a Wicked fan, you've literally never watched a single episode of the show, but I digress. Let's talk about Harry. Y'all thought Daylight was going to be my favorite. This is a strong choice and I don't judge it because it's also the name of a Taylor Swift song. I also have a theory around like Carolina and Daylight. I'll make a video about it, but no, Daylight is not my pick for the favorite song. You also thought it was Grape Juice because of the whole fruit trend between all of Harry's albums, but I've never been a fan of this fruit thing he's got going on. I just think it's, of all the genres and themes and illusions you're going to make, you're going to just pick different fruits. I don't know. Not my thing.
When George Lucas was in high school and he didn't try in school, it ended up being a really big problem because the week before his high school graduation, he got into a really big car crash, like car flipped multiple times, slammed into a tree, car crash, and was in the hospital and missed his high school graduation, which, like I said, because he didn't study in high school because he thought he was going to be a race car driver, ended up being an issue because then he couldn't go to college. His dad was like, you're going to study anthropology at this community college. And he was like, Dad, that's super lame. But because he had friends from high school who ended up going into film.
So basically what we see is a bunch of Marvel characters standing around with cats in different carriers. Marvel still hasn't explained to me like why certain people chose certain carriers for their cats. Alpine is in a papoose, which we respect, right? Leho is in a cat carrier with a grape, which we do not respect at all. And no one has explained to me why Natasha would put that poor cat in that position. It also just had a bunch of Peter Parker like holding random cats, but none of them had distinguishing features. So I don't know.
So I've laid out my qualifications, and I would just like to say the rationale for splitting the Wicked movie in half, I assume it's going to be in half, is that there's just too much story to cover and they couldn't do it in one movie, which does not make sense to me because the musical is maybe 2 hours and they accomplish it in that. And I want to say like the history of the Wicked movie has been long and it's been winding, and like the fact that it is theoretically going
Before all the Harrys come for me, I do enjoy every song that's named after fruit that he's ever put out. I just don't understand this like trend between all the albums. The other song that came up was Daydreaming. This is a big mystery one to me, the same way that Canyon Moon was a mystery to me when I saw the original track list for Fine Line. But Canyon Moon is now my stan song from that album. So I don't know if you're wrong necessarily, but it's not the one that I picked as my song. And my pick has such significant history to something that I'm a fan of that I never talk about.
So George Lucas visits his high school friends in college at USC, and they're like, hey, like, you should go to school here. And he's like, I don't want to be a filmmaker. I want to be a race car driver, because he's never getting over that ever. But then he applies to USC, and because he has a bunch of connections to it, and he's also like pretty rich, he gets in. Whoop-de-doo. And then he makes a bunch of friends at USC. Alexis is laughing. He makes a bunch of friends at USC, and makes a bunch of weird films. And then he's like, I still want to make a Flash Gordon movie, because all I really care about is race cars and big spaceships, and that's all I want to ever do, ever.
So the cats are in inappropriate carriers, and none of them have like distinguishable features. So there are two white fluffy cats, and I don't know which white fluffy cat is Alpine. Like, I don't know if Steve Rogers Captain America is holding his husband's cat, or like if that's the other white fluffy cat. It's very vague. Some of the panels like don't even have cats in them. It's just people standing around as if they were like looking for the cats, which I don't think is appropriate representation either. The only real positive.
Okay, there are people in the comments saying that Wicked is 2 hours and 45 minutes. I don't care. I've seen it 5 times. I'll see it 5 more times. And what I truly want from this movie is the musical in a movie. I don't want them to add a bunch of extra stuff. If anything, they should cut songs. Like, make it, why? Why does it have to be 2 movies? Why is the first movie going to end with Defying Gravity? It is not that climactic anymore. Like, yes, it'll be cool to see Alphabet actually fly, but I don't want it. I just don't want that.
I don't think I've ever talked on this show about how big of a Queen fan I am, but Queen is one of my like original stan bands. I love Queen. Queen is like my favorite of all time. So when I saw that Love of My Life was the last song on the track list, I am praying that it is a cover of Queen's Love of My Life and not an original song with the same name. There would be so much meaning if Harry covered that song, and I don't have enough time to talk about it, but I'll make a TikTok about it. It's such a queer-coded song, and if you've heard my past rants about Harry sexuality, makes sense.
So while George Lucas is in college, he makes some like actually pretty cool student films. Like, I'm not gonna lie, he's actually pretty good at what he does. But as if we didn't know that, because Star Wars isn't big or anything. But after he graduates college, he's like, I literally still only care about Flash Gordon, and if I'm not gonna be a race car driver, I'm gonna make a movie about it instead. And so he tries for years to get the rights to make a Flash Gordon movie, but he can't. So instead he makes this thing called Star Wars, which is just a Flash Gordon adaptation, and he gets a bunch of funding from Francis Ford Coppola, and that's why Star Wars is a fan fiction, which is why this was for Sly, and there you go.
Oh, they're gonna be so upset that they missed it. Okay, well, cats. Okay, so the only positive was that they did not include the Meow Mix panel that I had issues with in the Alpine and not Alpine Infinity comics. So I think that's evidence that like Marvel listened and is learning. They were like, okay, Meow Mix bad, won't include Meow Mix. Cats good, will include cats. But I think if you can fit all of your cat representation in like 60 seconds, you really have a long way to go.
I spent too long explaining my qualifications. I didn't get to make my actual points.
Marissa, let's graciously, in honor of Sly's missing time, which we did this on a previous show too. When you weren't here, Marissa, we all added 30 seconds to our rant because none of us felt like we finished our points. So Marissa, 15 seconds.
Well, the decision to split the movie, split the show, whatever they're doing, as a rationale for covering story sort of makes sense to me, because there is a time jump between Act 1 and Act 2. But it also doesn't make sense to me because they spend so much time at Shiz in Act 1. Like, I understand sort of the like, we want time to develop the relationship between Elphaba and Glinda. We want time to develop the relationship between Elphaba and Fiero. We want time to blah, 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 blah. But I feel like Act 2 is very, like, I don't know. I've had dwindling faith in the Wicked movie as the years have gone on. And I was excited for a second. I was pretty energized by Cynthia and Ariana, but now I don't know. I'm obviously gonna watch it, and I'm obviously probably gonna love it anyway. But I just didn't like. I didn't like it.
Also, why am I on the wrong side of the screen? This makes me very mad. It's because I flipped us before the rants. I feel like coming out of West Side story where they did do so much stage to screen like adaptation so well, and like I don't know, I feel like it's hard to think about another movie musical that is going to be so different from the stage experience when we've just seen one done quite well.
Yeah, Wicked is so specific to what it is as a show that I have a really hard time conceptualizing what it's going to look like on screen. So I think in some ways, like, making a hard pivot from what the show is doing is a good thing, because I won't be as, like, I don't know,
compare and contrast.
Yeah, I won't be comparing it as directly, but it just it means I also have to wait for it longer. I have to wait a long time to hear No Good Deed, and I don't want to wait a really long time to hear No Good Deed.
Well, I'll sing it for you anytime, except
Great,
I can't
thank
sing,
you.
and I won't do it here. So not anytime, most times. Alexis, I also want to applaud your advocacy of cats in proper carriers. It's something that I know you feel so deeply about. I feel like we need to start a petition.
It's bizarre to me that none of them have strollers. Not one.
Oh yeah.
Not one Marvel cat has a stroller.
And you're currently doing live testing of cat strollers on your Instagram. So if you're not following Alexis and your cat account, plug the cats on Instagram.
Oh yeah, Tommy and Sassy Blake. Yep.
You can follow to see more of the testing of why this should happen within the MCU. And Bunky, I don't know if you saw my comment here in the chat, but Race Car Driver was not on my bingo card for the season, but it should have been. That's such an iconic rant. I think it'll go down in history. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to say to wrap up?
I think I hit all the points I wanted to hit. But to Marissa's rant, I want to add that I have friends who are like big musical theater fans, and then friends who are like big Ariana Grande fans, and that's where the split is happening for people who like this whole two-part Wicked thing, and the people who don't like this two-part Wicked thing. I just find that interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I will probably feel differently once I see a trailer. Reserving final judgment, but I was very upset by the announcement. So I've cooled down since then, but
well, you don't have to worry. It's not like we'll pull up this exact moment and show it to you in the future and force yourself to react to it.
You've got a long time.
That Bunky's rant blew my mind, because I am I'm a Trekkie. I'm a Star Trek girl. But there is an episode of Timeless that I adore that's all about race car driving, but it's chock full of Star Wars quotes. And I was like, why are we making this happen? Like, why are there are all these references when we're talking about like the first Black race car driver? And that is why. So thank you for that. Thank you for educating me tonight.
My absolute pleasure. I'm glad you enjoyed.
It was very impressively tight.
Thank you.
I've written multiple essays for college about it, which is why it's like so ingrained in my head.
Thank you to Pedigree81555 that just followed us on Twitch. Woo, we see you. We appreciate you. Sorry, I had to say that before the thought left my mind because it came up very quickly on my screen. Sorry to cut you off, Bunky.
I think I was finished. We're good.
Okay, cool. Okay. I missed an important segment off the top of the show that I want to quickly wrap back to. So, Bunky, feel free to jump in here if you'd like. But we didn't get to share some of what we've been watching this week before we jump into the dumpster fire of a conversation about Moon Knight. I'm going to call it a dumpster fire, not because it isn't important, but because, oh man, do we have a lot to unpack. And I know that some of you are going to tune out because you haven't watched the episode yet. So before we do that, let's talk about some of the other things we've been watching this week. I want to start with Marissa because you watched something in person last week. That's the reason why you weren't here. Do you want to share with everyone where this iconic image came from?
Yeah, that is me in line to see Olivia Rodrigo on the Sour Tour in Detroit. Went on a little road trip last weekend. But that was me in line as this show was starting last week. And so I got to watch Olivia Rodrigo live during We'll Throw the After Party, and then I got to re-watch We'll Throw the After Party as the replay. And it was my first. There was like 1 week that I wasn't on the show.
Shout out to the replayers.
Shout out to the replayers.
We love you.
There was 1 week where I wasn't on the show, but I watched it mostly live. So I felt like I got to be in the live chat and stuff, and I felt like I was still a part of it. But watching the replay was super fun. I left a ton of comments, and so I want to say to anybody who watches the replay, we see you.
Comment
you
your
see
little
those
hearts
view
out.
counts go up, comment your hearts out. It is so fun. I love to just like shout back like exactly what I would have said if I was on the air.
You'll see
and
all of
if
us
you
tomorrow
comment-
coming in being like, another thing.
Yes, if you comment, we will reply.
Mhm.
Like, keep this conversation going. We all have access to the comments.
I check them like daily.
Yes, I am ready to be a part of this conversation.
Absolutely.
And then I also wanted to talk very, very quickly about what I've actually been watching for the last week, which is Taika Waititi's Instagram story.
I have to admit something before we go any further in this conversation. I, of course, as the important person I think I am, absolutely responded to his story telling him to turn on captions because it was bothering me so badly that he was
I
not
know.
captioning his stories, folks.
He was
It's
posting like
important
every
if
2
you
minutes.
can.
He was posting like every 2 minutes. And I sort of understand it, but also I was like, the button is right there. Like, just press the button before you press post. But it's been a saga. I think it's over now. I don't think there were any updates today, but it has lasted truly all week, and it has been thrilling to me. One of my favorite things is when I like go on vacation or go to like a touristy trappy spot is to pretend like I'm vlogging, to like fake vlog and say like and subscribe all the time. And that's exactly what he's been doing all week on his Instagram stories, and I've had a great time watching it. Also, I have watched Our Flag Means Death 4.5 times now. So just had to get that in there. I'm still not doing well. But we're trying to reframe
schedule, yeah, with Falcon or Captain America and the Winter Soldier, I think.
Yeah, we're trying to reframe for Wanda. So we're going hardcore in the Wanda direction. But I've talked too long. It's not my turn anymore.
No, it's okay. I think you're doing great. I want to be obnoxious about this man for a minute because if you did not see the news, if you did not see my TikTok about this, James Corden is leaving the Late Show. So they're going to be looking for a new host or whatever they decide to do with the property. And Mr. Ali Plum made this edit, or his friend made the edit and he posted it. But I would like to petition for this to actually happen, Ali Plum. Like, don't be putting this thought in my head unless you're willing to back it up. We are the Ali Plum fan club before we are We'll Throw the After Party. Like, first and foremost, we are all Radio 1 Screen Time podcast listeners. I know I listen every single day while I'm working. I support this. Let me come produce it. Let me come write for it, Ali. Would anyone else like to throw their hat in the ring here to support Ali Plum Late Show?
I'm available.
Alexis can like do cat commentary and advise on like cats for you. She can be your comics. If you want to come do a live test with us, Ellie, you can come to our platform. We'll allow you to. We'll produce a little late night Saturday night show for you. How's that sound? Claw coming in hot in the chat here. You should get the job, not Allie Plum. Listen, I've also put my name in the ring. The audacity
She has.
Let's talk about the timeline of what happened. Like, Eric saw the news as a, you know, when you get an Apple News like banner or whatever, like he saw it on Twitter immediately as soon as the news came out and sent it to me. And then I got off my ass and filmed a TikTok within 5 minutes and had it posted within 20 minutes of the announcement coming out. So within 20 minutes of the announcement coming out, I'd already said, screw that man, let me have it, which is a little bit audacious. Is that the right word? Audacious? How do you say that?
Audacious.
Thank you. Of me. However, I stand by it. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I don't want to abandon this show. So if someone wants to pick us up, producerlizcollabs@gmail.com or we'll throw the afterparty at gmail.com. We're ready for your offer. CBS, you can take the whole team and Bunky. Come along for the ride, Bunky.
Always. I need an internship.
They're beautiful. Done.
Yes.
Alexis, what were you watching this week?
911. Okay, but see, Sly was going to do a rant tonight that included a very important episode to them that I had not seen, and so the bargain offline was you don't have to close your ears if you can get through it. So I spent a lot of effort like trying to get caught up so I could listen to this rant, and now it's not here. But I am officially caught up on OG. So I am ready for next week's. Like I am caught up.
Wow.
Sadly, apparently, I'm told that means I have to watch Lone Star now. And I've got to say, Liz, I can't really take your man seriously. So
Listen, I'm told that once a week at minimum. So you're not telling me things everyone else isn't already telling me about Pablo.
So I don't know how that will be, but I have come up with a lot of 911 opinions. I don't know. Maybe they'll be shared on the show eventually, but I have lots of thoughts about the 2 seasons I binged in the last week.
We'll wait for Sly to return so we can do this combo justice. Bunky, I'm gonna throw you in here. I know you weren't expecting to do this segment, but were you watching anything this week of note? And if not, I have a different question for you related to Parks and Rec, since we can finally talk about it on this show.
I have been here the whole time. I don't know what you're talking about.
That was Marissa Bate. I apologize.
I've been watching, other than Moon Knight, I've been rewatching Full House, which has been enjoyable yet disappointing. I didn't realize how like playfully misogynistic and homophobic they get. But also the show was my childhood, and so it's like a weird tightrope walk of enjoyment yet discomfort. And I also started finally, unfortunately, watching What If yesterday.
Bunky.
Yeah.
Okay, wait.
I knew
Pause.
all of this. I can't believe I
Pause.
forgot all of these things.
Are you doing what I advised, which is you watch an episode and then you watch the after party episode and then bounce back and forth? Because personally, I think the viewing experience is better when you rewatch our commentary as the show gets worse and worse.
There's still time for me to do that.
I don't even think people need to watch What If you're trying to get caught up before Multiverse of Madness. Just watch the after parties.
Especially because that was Liz and I, that was our first show together. So it is peak chaos.
It's like no show doc, just vibes for an hour.
Just anger.
Yep. Sorry, Bunky, please continue. What's your impression of What If so far?
So I watched the first episode, which I had already seen. That was the start and end of my original What If watch through. But I
You're doing great so far.
I rewatched it because my mom and her fiance hadn't seen it, and they're going to be seeing Multiverse of Madness with me, and I can't deal with them being more confused than they're going to be. So they just need the context. And it was something. My mom liked it, if that counts for anything.
Listen, your mom's opinion holds a lot of weight around here, so I'm not gonna bash Bunky's mom. Listen, Bunky's mom wants to adopt everybody, so I'm not going against the family here. But I will say we had some heavy words in the after party for episode 1 around Steve. It's like sometimes I black out during episodes and then I rewatch and then I'm scarred by the words I say. And that episode, oh man, if you want to see Liz unleashed, I cannot believe Alexis ever came back to the show after my heavy-handedness around how horrible Steve Rogers was.
I don't think I told you this. That's the episode I watched before I was gonna be on the show to like figure out what the show is like.
Liz and I, for 15 minutes before that episode, were trying to figure out how much we could say to each other without, like, ending the friendship before it started. So Liz is like, how did you feel about the episode?
I will say, though, it started off so politely. You were so, like gently getting into it, and then you like hit a point in the episode where you're like, we gotta go.
There was like a cliff we were just standing on the edge of. And then we just went full throttle. You know what? Never
and to
again.
think my husband watched all of that live and still agreed to marry me.
Listen, a lot of people watching tonight watched that episode. Y'all were there and you stuck around. So thank you for believing that we can be loud and obnoxious and still worth tuning into every week, I think. Bunky, you'll have to go watch and then come provide us some commentary on what you thought, especially on our and I'm gonna say this and then we're gonna try and just like hold the lid down on this can I'm gonna open. The commentary on Captain Carter on that episode was very fascinating, and that's been a very spicy conversation around TikTok and Twitter these days. So if you want to know,
it was also in July.
If you want to hear what we thought about Captain Carter in July of 2021, there's how many episodes of What If were there? 10 million?
9?
Yeah, 9
Too
or
many.
10.
Yeah, there's about 9 episodes worth of us talking about Captain Carter and how problematic the character is. So you can go tune in if you'd like. You'll also find commentary around the Hawkeye musical, of which we fan casted it 12 different ways. So if that's more your speed, you can go rewatch that as well. And I would say it still holds up. Every choice we made, I think, still holds up.
Everything compared to what they
think so.
actually did still holds up.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
How far have you gotten, Bunky?
In What If? I just watched the
Yeah.
first episode so far.
Okay.
Because I'm watching with my mom, so I have to like wait until we're both like able to watch at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
so
just
I'll
wanted to
update
know if
you as
I wanted to know
continue.
if you'd made it to the Doctor Strange episode yet. But we don't have to talk about that yet because we
No.
have a
No,
section.
no,
We're
no.
talking about Doctor
Yeah.
Strange later.
Hmm.
I just want to quickly make a judgment call. If you're watching right now, like if you're watching with us live, replayers, I love you, but the live commenters are going to help me gauge how far I'll go with this segment. How much do y'all know about my thoughts on Doctor Strange? Can you let me know in the chat how familiar you are with my hot takes on Doctor Strange? Because I'm either going to have to reintroduce you to my hot takes or pick up last time, like where I left off. So if you can comment letting me know how much you know about my Doctor Strange opinions, that would be excellent. And I'll let you do that while we transition into Moon Knight episode 5. Ooh. So if you have not watched Moon Knight episode 5, now is the time to log out, besties. Come back at around 45 minutes and we'll wrap up and move into other segments that aren't about Moon Knight, but this is your cue to leave and come back. Someone will update in the chat. Usually it's Bunky, but Bunky is here talking, so someone else will have to take the mantle on this week. Let's talk about Moon Knight episode 5. Let's start with our WTF moment of the week. Now, I know this entire episode felt a little bit like a WTF moment of the week, but I want to start with Marissa because I think when we made this segment, like the origins of doing a WTF moment of the week was to talk about the finer details of some of Marvel's work that just kind of immediately stand out for being poor choices. And Marissa, you really got to the core of this segment this week with your moment. So why don't you fill us in?
Chicago doesn't look like that. We don't have caves. Like, Illinois as a state has caves. I don't know anywhere in the city of Chicago that you can go and climb into a cave at all. Apparently, Sly made a note in the show doc that apparently Mark is from Wicker Park, which is sort of accurate. He says Milwaukee Street, or I think it's Steven actually that says Milwaukee Street at one point, which, you know, is pretty accurate to the Wicker Park neighborhood. But there are definitely not any caves around there. And there's also definitely not any. It was a big yard for Wicker Park. It was a big yard for anywhere in Chicago. And also, we don't really have yellow cabs. There were yellow cabs everywhere, which I guess apparently just like is the generic sign, like generic signal for city. Like, how do you know you're in a city? There are yellow cabs. Like, most of our cabs are not yellow. They're like white. So I have to say, generally, most of what I was watching in the episode was how accurate the Chicago representation was, and it wasn't. Like,
big ol' X from Chicago this week, folks.
Like,
because you know when we talk about representation, we start with Chicago, then we go to women, then we keep going from there. You know,
yeah,
that's a joke. Every representation is very important. It's just funny that we're starting with Chicago of all of the representation done poorly this week. Strong start.
It was not that hard to Google caves in Chicago. Like. They don't exist. Like a reservoir, sure. Like a marshland, we have those. But Illinois is prairie land. Like on the edges, like by Missouri, like Tennessee sort of areas. I think Kentucky touches Illinois. I don't know. South and like
I'm Canadian. You
west
can say
edges.
anything right now. What else touches Chicago, Illinois?
Well, none of those things touch
Texas?
Chicago. Chicago is on a
right. Okay.
Which is the lake and nothing else. But like the western and southern edges
California.
of
No, I'm just naming states.
There are caves in Illinois, but they're not in Chicago. Like I don't. That really bothered me.
Unless those two went on a long walk before dinner. Like
Yeah.
a long walk.
Like I don't know. Like that geography exists in Illinois, but there were other choices. If that was the story that they were going to go with, which we can talk about further,
We could have just gone
there were
for some
other
deep
bodies
dish
of
pizza,
water.
Not known he was lactose intolerant.
There were a lot
There
of
was
other
lots of
bodies of
Chicago-based
water.
choices.
There is a major river in Chicago. The entire city is along the lakefront of Lake Michigan. There are a lot of bodies of water. I don't understand why the cave was the choice, but
WTF. Done. Signed, sealed, delivered. On an equally as serious note from me, my WTF moment of the week was the vest that Mr. What's his name therapist was wearing. I just think of him as Ethan Hawke. I still haven't learned this man's name. Our villain?
we don't need to.
Harrow. He's not Harrow, but he also wants to Harrow. But you know who I'm talking about. What's his name?
Mhm. I
This is
mean,
how much I care about him.
this is how confused I am by this show. All of the like promo videos and stuff that they've been posting since the episode aired, the captions still say his name is Arthur Harrow. So I think it's still the same person, and I don't understand what is reality and what's not, but I don't think I need to. So I'm just gonna go with Ethan Hawke.
So Ethan Hawke is wearing this vest, right? As a therapist, he's got like this. And to me, I had don't ask me why my brain had this thought. It just did, and I'm gonna honor it. I was looking at his outfit and wondering what the climate control in that place was, because all the workers had these short sleeves on, and he had like multiple layers, and I'm like, you should be sweating.
That was another Chicago thing. If that is supposed to be reality, there's no building in Chicago that looks like that. Absolutely never. Chicago's not that cool.
Well,
Sorry.
isn't it the cave thing or something? Like, isn't the building that is the...
It is kind of...
No, like, it's literally, it is. Like, it's just painted white. They're, like, side by sides of the inside of... Remember the
What?
It was, like, the room where Steven was like, I'm, like, in a magician's, like, man cave or something? It's that room, but painted white. And the magician that he was referring to was Harrow. And so I don't know.
This is the thing.
Blew my mind.
This is the thing. Sly is usually the person that's paying the most attention on this show.
True.
Liz and I both are like, we watched it once and we're done.
We're done. I watched it 3 days ago.
Thank you for
I did
filling
how
that
many
role
things
for
since?
us, Bunky.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
So yeah, I'm not a fan of the costuming of Harrow in this whatever place we're in right now. I was worried about climate control. I was worried about how many layers he was wearing. I don't know. To me, if he's supposed to be someone that's evil, wouldn't that mean his body runs warm? I don't know. I had lots of thoughts that made no sense, but I did not like the outfit. I did not feel like it fit. That's where I'll leave that thought. And the reason why we're intentionally being a bit more silly off the top is because we're about to transition into a pretty serious conversation. Alexis, would you like to share your WTF moment of the week before we do that?
Yes. My WTF moment of the week is that there was a talking British hippo and there was still no cat. And I am very confused as to why Bast is nowhere to be seen at all. I just don't understand it. The cats are right there. Egyptian mythology is filled with cats. I don't know why a cat couldn't have been involved in that story next to our British hippo, who I don't understand why they're British. Someone please explain to me if you know more about that, because I'm very confused as to why the Egyptian god is British.
I believe it's because that's the actor's natural accent, and the actor is like British Egyptian, I think.
Okay, sure. It was very confusing to me. And I will say I can also do, if you need me, I can do Sly's WTF.
Absolutely.
Because it was very funny. So there's a line where Sly and I watched this together for context, and not that anyone knows that because I didn't leave that information all through the show doc just to be annoying. But there's a moment where Haro says, like, tell me about the boy. And the way that it was phrased, Sly thought this was going to go in a very gay direction and then was immediately disappointed when in fact it was a brother who had been unalived rather than, some like secret gay military romance that we never got to see unfold. So that was their WTF.
There's a fan fiction prompt for someone to go write. Please. You have a week until the next after party. We will be waiting for your AO3 link. And with that, let's talk about Jewish representation in the show, which is something that we've mentioned a little bit, but as 4 people, including Sly, the 4 people that are usually here who are not Jewish, there's only so much that we can say without over-speaking or speaking in spaces that we should not be, or overstepping on conversations that we do not have a role in. Bunky, we're so pleased to have you this week, and hopefully we can have a conversation about Jewish representation. And with the lens of knowing you are one person and not an entire global community, and nor would we ever expect that of you. But if you're not following Bunky on TikTok, they're making a great series about this as well. So go check them out there. And we're going to be sharing some of our other favorite creators who are also speaking about this. So with all of that said, let's talk about this episode and the lens of Jewish representation that it gave, because it certainly tried to do something.
It did something. I'll give it that.
It tried to do something.
And I'll say what it did was
made a choice.
It was not inaccurate. Like, everything they did was like a thing that would happen. Like, but I feel like it was a little. It didn't leave a good taste in my mouth. As excited as I was for Mark Spector to be Jewish, like, on screen, because in the MCU, we've been waiting for that kind of representation for 14 years, even though the entire comic book industry as we know it would not exist without Jewish people fighting against their own persecution through the creation of comic books. But Mark Spector's original story, which was one about becoming a superhero to protect his family from anti-Semitic violence, just got rid of the whole anti-Semitic violence part, which I think was pretty key to his character and key to respecting why, like, Marvel Comics exists at all. And then, yeah. So that's sort of, it was really cool. Like, I'm excited that he's Jewish. It's still really exciting. But I'm upset that I don't have, like, a screenshot I can take from this show where he's happy and Jewish that I can make, like, my phone lock screen. He's just very traumatized and depressed the whole time.
Or like in focus, right? Because like in the earlier episodes, like, so for context here, we were having a conversation in the early episodes about if there was even going to be visual Jewish representation. And I woke up one day to a message from Danielle with like screenshots of like, oh, like you can see. And then I watched the episode later that day and I was like, where did these screenshots come from? And it's because it was so like understated and just there, which is beautiful in one sense, but then also I think to the point of how long fans have been waiting for Jewish representation to happen, it almost felt, at least to me as an outsider here, a little bit jarring to be like, oh, that's the foot we're going to start on. Like, just so blurry that you have to zoom in 1,000 times to confirm that that's what you're seeing.
And I would not have even seen in episode 2 the necklace or the mezuzah on his doorframe had Danielle not sent screenshots to our group chat about that. Like, totally went over, not over my head, but like I just didn't see it, and I was like watching for that specifically.
I fully missed the mezuzah until your video today. I was like, that's been there the whole time?
It was like one very brief, he opens the door to bring Layla into the apartment. That's the only time we saw it, because it's on the outside of the door frame, which is, that's normal. Like, that's not a critique. That's just how it works. But we never see the outside of his door. So it like makes sense that we didn't see it, but also that doesn't make me happy.
So let's dig into this a little bit more. I'm gonna put like a trigger warning on this conversation. Even if you did watch the episode, I think it was a pretty violent episode, both literally and then also in terms of how emotional it was to watch. So if you found the episode triggering, just know we're gonna deep dive into some of that in the next part of this conversation. So, you know, take care of yourselves. Fast forward to later when we're gonna talk about Harry Styles again if you need to. It's all good. Or go back to us talking about cats a few minutes ago. Like, it's all good. Here's a genuine question I have that I have not been able to find an answer to this week. Was the violence from his mom also part of the comics and they chose to focus on that? No. So they fully replaced. Okay.
They replaced anti-Semitic violence from like somebody somebody who's affiliated with a particular political party, part of World War II, that committed anti-Semitic violence. They removed that and said, actually, he's going to have this thing with his mom, which is not to say that people don't have that sort of relationship with their parents. That's obviously a real thing. But it's not that's sort of where this episode is both representation and at the same time erasure, because they got rid of a quintessential part of the story, in my opinion, at least.
One of the things no, go ahead, Marissa.
I've seen a lot of people say that if you removed all of the references to Judaism, the story wouldn't really change. And I think that's really important to point out, that in certain ways it can feel like it was, you know, thrown in for like tokenism, rather than being like a central point of the story.
Or thrown in because they knew that it was going to be expected or asked for, or a critique if they did not, right? Which isn't to say that that's not tokenism, because in my interpretation of tokenism, that very much is aligned.
Right.
But when you think about like intent versus impact, like this is what happens with the context that we have. If you have not watched previous episodes of our show, every week we reference this damn production brief that was put out, right? Which is the official brief from Marvel. It's 34 pages, like we say every week, and it breaks down the show, the decisions, the experts they brought in, the reasons why they cast who they cast. They talk about mental health in the comics. They talk about Jewish history. They talk about Egyptian culture. And it's almost like this justification for how they built the show, right? And it's meant to be a tool to help press and media when they're interviewing people associated with the show and writing stories about the show, which is all good and fine. It's a very standard document, right? But when we look back at this production brief and we see, we cared so much about how we considered mental health, and we cared so much about how we considered Egyptian culture, we cared so much about doing particular pieces right, it's so jarring to see, read, hear that message very explicitly said, and then also see pieces of the show that represent culture that are so that, like, if you had proper consultation in place at any level, you probably would have had some advice given to you to switch up your strategy.
Something interesting that I noticed, I was going through like the credits of the show and like looking at who their Jewish consultant was, because I had heard that there was one. And something interesting that I found about her was that she was raised interfaith Jewish and Muslim, which makes sense given that the director of Moon Knight is himself Muslim. And he probably, like, I'm filling in blanks to a story I know nothing about, maybe knew her through that side of like her family, even though she is a rabbi and she does, it seem, my understanding, she is Jewish now, and practices Judaism and stuff, but she's not not because she's Muslim, but because she's not, like Mark Spector, Latina and Jewish, not who I would have selected to be the Jewish consultant on this show, because just like any identity, if you're Jewish and something else, you're probably practicing your Judaism differently than, there's so many different ways to be Jewish. It's like Danielle is always joking, like 2 Jews, 3 opinions. You're never going to agree. You're never going to get it perfect. And that's part of the point of being Jewish. But it seemed like the director selected her focusing more on that side of the representation, even though the consultant on the show should have been somebody who shares an identity with Mark in multiple ways instead of just being Jewish.
And I think this leads to like an interesting question that does not have an answer, right? Which is we've seen multiple projects with like consultant brought in and never consultants. Like, why couldn't we have had like 5 Jewish consultants on the show where, you know, with a mix of backgrounds and lived experiences and had someone from Chicago and had someone from Egypt and had someone, et cetera, right? And I think the same about, and we'll talk about this a bit later in the show when we talk about mental health and the professional they brought in to advise on mental health. But again, it was just one consultant without lived experience advising on the entirety of the mental health story and representation of that in this show. And I think that speaks to some of these bigger problems, not just exclusive to Marvel, but in the industry of, we'll find one person and we'll put the onus on them to fix it or to be here so we can say they were here. Again, I'm not saying that's what Marvel did, but those are the stories you hear so often in the industry of a hire someone and they're here and it's great. We'll sit them in a chair or they'll advise on the script or they'll advise in post and maybe they won't be here through the entire process or maybe they will be and be very active. But definitely you can see where the strategy falls apart when this is the end product. And this is a really unfortunately poor example of an end product where multiple consultants would have perhaps been a way to change some of this outcome.
This is so not relevant to this conversation, but really quickly, I just realized I think I said Milwaukee Street. It's Milwaukee Avenue. And I just want to clarify, I know what I'm talking about. I've lived in Chicago for 5 years. I know I've been on Milwaukee Avenue. I just wanted to clarify.
Again, Chicago representation from Marissa.
It's the only thing I have to bring.
Bunky, there's a comment here from Sylvan, a question I'm wondering if you'd want to answer. Sylvan says, my understanding is that Jewish heritage is based on mother's lineage, not the father. So with them replacing the violence with his mother, would that almost make his heritage the source of trauma rather than what he's trying to defend?
That is a very good question and not something that I've seen anybody talk about before. It's not something that I've thought about yet. Wait, let me like reread this really quickly to make sure I'm like actually taking it in correctly. Okay.
It's a big question.
Yeah. So something that a lot of people have been talking about is the scene where he like throws his kippah to the ground and like punches it and stuff. And we're sort of something that I've been trying to grapple with is why is he taking the anger at his mom out on his being Jewish? And why is his because the way that it's shown is that his Judaism, or the way that it's justified is that his Judaism is equal to his relationship with his mom. But we never see her be Jewish with him ever. She is at the Shiva after his brother passes, but it's only after the fact. And so I'm trying to figure out why they think it's a justifiable like writing strategy to say that he's angry at his kippah or his relationship with Judaism because his mom got mad at him and like had that relationship with him. So I think that the writers of the show are probably making that the point, that because it's his mom, it is his Jewishness. That's not something that I think makes sense. Somebody commented on one of my videos that, you know, we see him celebrate his birthday twice. I think it was his 10th birthday and his 12th birthday, if I counted the candles correctly. And what would have made a lot more sense to me and to the commenter who brought this up was if that second birthday that he was celebrating was his 13th birthday and his bar mitzvah, and that his mom and his mom's anger towards him was brought out on his bar mitzvah. And that is, you know, a celebration, a happy celebration of Jewishness and coming of age and stuff. And if his mom ruined that instead of his birthday, then I could understand the justification of him throwing the kippah to the ground at the end of the show.
I also I found it kind of interesting that they chose to go with this angle of violence from the mother, particularly because other Marvel projects have made allusions to the political organization whose violence was involved in the comics. It's not like Moon Knight would be the first show to make any reference to that. And I wonder, It also seems interesting to me that Moon Knight is perhaps the first time we've brought on any sort of Jewish consultant, when we've been making a lot of allusions and also erasing a lot of the Jewish history that's involved in the comics for lots of other characters that we've had involved in the MCU up to this point.
I think back to a comment that I made when we were talking a few weeks ago, and I was thinking about this as we were watching Hawkeye, right? Which also had a very similar scenario of pieces of Jewish culture just kind of appearing with no additional context or language around it with Kate Bishop, which is fascinating for many reasons, right? But it makes me think back to this bigger picture of how Phase 4 was, and we kind of got confirmation of that this week with the headline that Kevin Feige's taking like this team on this 10-year Marvel planning mission, right? But this idea that Phase 4 was planned for short term and not long term, right? Like they know some of the points they're going to hit, but this vision of how they're going to approach projects for the next decade is not even close to decided yet. Like we got the headline to say, oh, we're going to go figure it out now, which is fascinating to me on like 10 million different levels. But one of my main pieces of critique was you can see the consistent flaws in all of these TV projects for Disney Plus, right? And their inconsistency in some ways. We talk about pacing all of the time across all these shows and how the pacing has never felt like it's been hit quite right in any of them, except maybe WandaVision, I would say, which had a different style of pacing on its own. But you can also see how like the idea of consultation so far in Phase 4 has really been of one mind. Like bring in a consultant on these projects that require a consultant. And perhaps in this Phase 10 planning Kevin Feige, the idea needs to be, what is the breadth of consultation we bring in? How do we build it into this first step of projects moving forward? Like, for example, I go on these types of trips. Like I've been in the retreat where we're planning out like quarters and half of a year or a year of content and strategy, right? Like, so I've got an idea of what Kevin Feige's going to get up to in his log cabin with his little whiteboard and markers around like Marvel and big red letters, and like Sam Wilson's going to like do all these things and Doctor Strange can do all these things. And like some of what I do in my work is I always think like, what are the systemic pieces we build now to make all of this easier? Because it makes my life easier if I make it consistent across the board. If I say like, oh, so like step 1 is figure out consultation workflow, right? And let's find teams of consultations or people that do this for a living and hire them to go across all the projects. Like, wow, wouldn't that make Marvel's life so much easier if they found a way to do this in a consistent way that was really meaningful? Marissa.
I think to me, it became clear that they didn't have as much of a plan as they led us to believe when they split Loki in half. Because if getting to the end of Loki wasn't like incredibly important for the future of the MCU, which I feel like it probably is, because that did not make any sense to me. I feel like they were kind of like, okay, we'll make a bunch of these shows, we'll throw them against the wall, and like we'll make, the movies we already announced, and like eventually they'll all intersect again. Because also like the Echo show wasn't planned. That came out of Hawkeye's production like 6 months ago. Like, there are a lot of these decisions that are being made sort of like right now, and they're sort of like picking up the pieces as they go. And I think the content in a lot of ways is suffering because of that. In a lot of ways, I think Phase 4 is is the strongest Marvel content we've gotten, just for the sake of diversity. But also, I think we're getting to the point of, quantity over quality in some instances, especially with our conversations around the Disney Plus shows and the sort of formula they continue following.
And I think it's important quickly just to say, like, it's also hurting the fans when this happens, right? It's not just the content's hurting. It's fans who want to see themselves represented and have been waiting for visible representation and waiting for their stories to be reflected. And if I have to say, of any culture that wants to see themselves reflected, like, Jewish culture should be something that Marvel, like, hits out of the park every single time based on the history, as Bunky, you explained earlier. So it's not even, I'm going to restate like this part of my thought. Like, it's so disappointing that we're applauding a bar that Marvel has set low for themselves when they've had every opportunity to figure out how to do it right, when their competitors are doing it better than they are, and when they have so much at their disposal to bring in and inform the work. Like, now I want to see that episode with the bar mitzvah. Like, to me, that feels now like an obvious choice that they should have made, right? But so it's disappointing when the fans are the ones that are hurt at the other end of it too.
And I think that in retrospect, now that we know that they're sort of just starting to plan everything long term again, in retrospect, looking at phase 4, it shows how experimental everything is. And we kind of knew like, oh, like the Disney Plus shows, like this is new, this weird like 6-episode format, and it consistently doesn't really work that well. And now I understand that's because they weren't sure if it was going to work, and they were like, let's just throw some stuff at them, see what they like, see what they pick up, and then make a bunch more of it going forward. Also, this whole retreat thing, I just keep thinking about that one episode of Parks and Rec.
Yeah, this is exactly what in my head.
Yeah. And I cannot picture them literally doing this retreat anywhere else, even though I know obviously they're not just in the middle of the woods.
If you don't watch Parks and Rec, there's one particular episode where they go on a retreat and then someone gets shot. And to me, it's like, they're fine. The person's fine. It's like, it's just a freak accident. But I'm like, that feels like the Marvel retreat to me. Like, someone's going to go in and something's immediately going to go wrong. Like, oh my God, what are we going to do to fix this? And they're just not going to fix any of the problems they set out to fix. They're going to be so sidetracked by this other thing happening. That's my bet for Marvel's creative trip. I hope everything's okay. I hope no one is injured. But I do feel like it's the kind of trip where one thing is going to go sideways and the whole strategy is going to get thrown off. So Marvel, I really hope for your sake you turn off your phones for the weekend, plug in with your little whiteboard, and just think about representation with your brains.
But at the same time, I think they should keep their phones on and make sure that they're watching all of our TikToks about this. Because also the fact that they're sort of just starting to plan this now makes me realize that we need to be talking now more and louder than we have been the entire time, because now is when they're finally actually like taking what we have to say and putting it to work.
Yeah, I'm gonna take what you're saying and transition us to a subtopic here. I want to talk about hard conversations that fans have, right? Like, because this has been kind of a theme on TikTok this week, right? And I completely agree with you. It's there is more space now for people to be visible and demanding of representation than I think there's ever been before, just because of the accessibility of making content and the amplification that platforms like TikTok can give, which is fantastic. But I also think it's really important that we learn how to support each other in these conversations, right? And when you see people that are trying to advocate for their communities, what do you do as someone perhaps not in that community, or even if you're in that community and you want to help amplify content or someone's voice, like what are the appropriate ways that we do that? And one of the things that I'm going to just say as a woman about, elevating the perspectives of women, about women's representation in media, is if you are not a woman, that's fine, but perhaps listen to what they say about their own representation, right? And I think there was a lot of dismissal of women's voices on TikTok this week that really just rubbed me the wrong way, particularly with this Captain Carter conversation, which is reinventing the wheel. Women have said every point 10 million times and are still not being listened to piece. And as we just continue to have more opportunities to talk about representation, I hope that we can all take time to reflect on how we can be allies to each other and use our platforms to support one another. Like, for example, I think this week was a week where it was so important to listen before you speak about Jewish representation, right? Like watching that episode and not having context and being grateful for the creators and the people that do have capacity to share context was so meaningful. So Bunky, I'm so grateful that you and Danielle and so many other creators have spoken up and are saying look, if you don't know, now you know, but let's have a serious conversation about it.
And I appreciate, especially when you listen and have these conversations. Thank you for inviting me on the show tonight is an excellent example of you using the platforms that you have to amplify other voices. I know that one of our mutuals, Vic, what's her use?
Vic Organa?
Name, but yes.
Victoria Organa. Yeah.
Thank you. Vic made a great video where they were just these are Jewish people. Go listen to them, and also don't talk over them. And it was a simple video, and they also reached out to me before posting it and was like, hey, is this something that I should post? And I was like, yeah, totally. I really appreciate you doing that. I didn't even think to ask people to do that. But Vic did that without asking, and well, with asking me after, like, by their own
Made the
volition.
content
Without
asking
you
if it was
asking.
okay. Yes.
Yes. And I think that that was also a really great example of stuff that we could all be doing to help uplift the voices who need to be heard in specific conversations at specific times.
Totally. Yeah. And oh my God, I had a thought, and then I was just thinking about that video and how I was like, oh, now I want to go make one of those, because I feel like it doesn't matter how many followers you have. I feel like everyone can take a moment and like think about the creators they want to direct their space to. I've lost my train of thought. Would someone else like to cut in on this point? I'm very happy you're here, Bunky. I'm really grateful that I remember my thought. I'm grateful we're having this conversation, and I think it's always important to say that, like, this conversation is not just about episode 5 of Moon Knight, and it's not like over when this episode of our show is over. Like, this is a conversation that's going to be with this like decade retreat planning that Kevin Feige is set out to do, right? Like, it's not. We have to have this conversation like forever, even when things are going really well. At that point, it's even equally as important to say things are going really well. How do you continue? And I think heading into this next week, it's going to be really important to listen to Jewish creators about Multiverse of Madness. And I hope that in the drama and the hype of Multiverse of Madness, we don't lose whatever they do decide to give us in terms of Wanda's cultural heritage and who she is as a person, which has been erased pretty severely in the MCU as well.
I was just thinking about that. With the woman behind me is a perfect example of being, whitewashed and culturally erased to the MCU.
Bunky, hold that back up. I wasn't done looking at it. Let me get close. Obsessed.
There he is.
I took him out of his box yesterday. I was like, this is hopefully his week. Well, it's Wanda's week. He's Wanda's daddy, or he should be in the MCU. But we'll wait and see what happens there.
And we will unpack it as well. I've been like knocking on wood all week about Multiverse of Madness. I'm like, please don't have strobe lights. Please do representation. Okay. I'm not expecting a lot from Marvel, but I'm just a teeny tiny bit of something that we might be able to celebrate. That would be lovely.
It's so tough that they set the bar so low that even like little sprinkles and little tiny like crumbs of representation are so exciting to us. Like in episode 2, when Mark wore the necklace, the Star of David necklace, I lost my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing. We're doing it. They're doing it. We're getting closer. It's awesome. But at the same time, I was like, I'm excited about some pixels that I have to zoom in and maybe see if I don't blink. Like, yeah, it's so frustrating because they've set the bar so low for themselves that now they're getting praised for doing still the bare minimum.
Yes, I want to build like a bare minimum graphic that we can have that's like the SpongeBob imagination, but it's just bare minimum.
I'll work on that. I'll make a note of that.
Shout out Bunky for making
Yes.
I haven't had the logo up this whole time.
Alpine Marie.
Bunky designed Alpine Marie, and I'm gonna throw up the end of show graphic, but the show's not over. It's just gonna make Alpine a lot bigger here. Bunky made that, our little icon. So thank you for bringing some branding to our show. We desperately needed it, and you are quite the ally to We'll Throw the After Party in terms of giving us skills we don't have.
I want to point out, maybe this is spoiling something, but Bunky threw in an Easter egg in the graphic. If you can find it, DM our Instagram, DM us on Twitter. It was a surprise to all of us. We're so happy with it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, big Easter egg, and yeah, no one's called it out yet, so it's been out there for a few weeks, folks. Get your Taylor Swift minds turned on. Get your Swiftie detective caps on. With that, before we leave the Moon Knight conversation, I feel like we have so much more to talk about here. So if you're coming back, we're going to do another like 20 minutes of Moon Knight here. So if someone can post that in the chat for our friends that are waiting to come back, that would be fantastic. Let's talk about mental health in this episode because this was a mental health episode. If it was trying to do anything, it really threw everyone for the loop. So I hope everyone took a little bit of time to self-care after that one. We've talked a lot on this show about the mental health aspect of Moon Knight. I'm gonna just start the conversation by saying that I am picking up where we've left off. So if you're looking for context, you can go back and rewatch previous episodes where we've talked in depth about some of the approach that's been taken, the outline and the production brief about their approach, what we've thought of their representation so far. And maybe to start this conversation again, Alexis, I might ask you to just reshare what you've already shared many times about your perspective on this and the expertise that you bring to the conversation, because I think it's important.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that.
No, I know. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I have bachelor's degrees in criminal justice and psychology, and I have a master's in experimental psychology. So most of my experience has been in research, and my research area of interest, or my research emphasis, my theses, my published articles, those have all been surrounding trauma and related trauma disorders, so things like PTSD. I was involved in a study that looked at DID in a very specific population. So we were looking at individuals who were assigned male at birth, who were under the age of 18, who had come in contact with the criminal justice system. That was with Dr. Jillian Stinson, who was very big in the DID and abnormal psychology world. And I'm getting ready to go back to work on my PhD in criminal justice with an emphasis, research emphasis looking at trauma in the life course. So that's kind of my history. I am someone who, collects personal mental illnesses like candy, but DID is not one of them. So specifically when we look at that, what did you just say?
That's going in the end of season highlight reel. Oh my God.
You haven't heard that one before? I've heard that.
No, I've never heard that before in my life.
Maybe Alexis and I have more therapy conversations than you do.
It's important that history, my personal history, is important in this episode particularly, because this episode was really set up to mirror a certain type of therapy that's referred to as EMDR. This is a therapy that kind of gets mixed results in the DID world. So if you can Google it on your own, but there are a lot of scholarly publications that look at whether or not EMDR is particularly effective when we're looking at dissociative identity disorder. It is something that is more aptly used for those of us who suffer from PTSD, like myself. So that's kind of where that has come in. EMDR is not something I'm familiar with as a practitioner. It's something I'm familiar with as a client. And this episode had those vibes to me. I know Nikki Marina on TikTok also kind of did a breakdown about her history with PTSD and EMDR. And I would really encourage everyone to look at that video specifically for the comments. There were a lot of conversations in the comments from people that are a system that have DID that were talking about kind of their familiarity with that therapeutic approach. So this was an episode that I really liked where the episode could have gone, right? It was one of those episodes. I liked the EMDR vibes. I thought there was some really great representation of memory repression and memory protection. And when we look at trauma or talk about trauma, one of the things that's often missed in media is that our body and our mind's reactions to trauma are often protective. PTSD is one of those. There are many parts of PTSD that is a protective trauma disorder, and DID is especially one of those. So when we look at the formation of alters, those are typically done to be protective, right? To protect the system from certain memories. And that's something that I think we saw done really well in this episode. There were really meaningful, like hard-hitting lines, like that's the whole point of you. Like you're not supposed to see that. That's the whole point of you, right? You were created to be protected from that. We were introduced to kind of this inciting incident, which I had mixed feelings about. There's kind of mixed research looking at inciting incidents and dissociative identity and kind of how that works, but they were certainly making an effort there. But then the episode went off the rails for me a little bit when we started talking about weighing two separate hearts for a system with DID. I think that's going to be something that we really need to listen to individuals who are talking about DID that have personal lived experience talk about. That was something that was very kind of off-putting to me, that those hearts would be different. That's not really the way that it works. And also the kind of unaliving or the refrigerating of one altar to continue the story of another, I thought was a really risky choice. And one of the things I think that is interesting to talk about here is to kind of go back to our conversation about consultants. And when I heard that there was a DID consultant involved on this show, I wrongfully made the assumption that that would be from someone whose practice was focused and their practical experience, their publications were all focused around DID or related trauma topics. And that doesn't seem to be the case with this particular consultant. This is someone who has worked on the writing of other television shows that deal with psychiatric disorders. But the breadth of his work, especially when we look at publications, seems to be on medication and not using medication in therapeutic approaches, which I think is why the EMDR aspect of this episode hit so well. But the more particular DID aspects were a little bit of a miss, because this is not someone who comes to us with a lot of research or practical experience in dissociative identity. Sorry, I know I babbled all that out.
No, that was wonderful. That was telling that very, thank you for always explaining things so clearly so everyone can be on the same page to have a conversation. One piece that I think is particularly important here is that we don't know the very specific details that a consultant was asked to consult on, right? So I think Alexis is making a really strong assumption here that is something that you can see the impact a consultant can have when someone who is brought in with specific expertise is in the room and able to help inform choices as they're being made. Not necessarily a choice made in post, which is another type of consultation, not necessarily something that can be done in the writing, although perhaps he was involved in the writing to say this is an approach that should be taken. But again, going back to the earlier point of consultants would have been helpful here, right? Bring in someone that has specific expertise in one vein, bring in people with lived experience to speak to their experiences in another vein. Imagine if it's thought that those scenes were done well, imagine how much better they could have been if it was done in conjunction with people that have that specific lived experience, right? It could have brought it to another level.
I'll also say, oh no, go ahead, Marissa.
No, this is a dumb point that I'm making a joke. But if Disney can get actual real lions to reference sketch for the Lion King, why can't they get more than one mental health consultant with actual either lived experience or professional experience with the disorder they're trying to talk about? Where are the priorities? Actual real life lion? Mental health.
Yep.
That was my point.
No, that's a good point. I'm glad you said it. It's a good point. And again, something that I feel is always worth calling out, as we see the impact that a poor decision can have, right? Alexis, where were you going to go next with this?
I was just going to say, kind of in reference to yours and Bunky's earlier conversation about uplifting voices, I did come across kind of several TikTok videos this week where there was an argument in the comments several times about the language that was being used in videos. Specifically, people saying hey, we the term alter and system, we want those to be used when we're discussing DID. And several times, several creators across several different videos, I saw this kind of reaction that was well, Moon Knight is just a very loose interpretation of what that is, so I don't need to use the appropriate language. And I will say that Moon Knight is certainly a very loose interpretation of mental health, but that doesn't mean that you get to turn away people who are trying to educate you on how to refer to this appropriately. And I would say, especially when there is negative representation or representation like Moon Knight that's not particularly accurate or not particularly positive across, all topics, but in this case, mental health, I think it's really important to listen to those voices and to just be mindful about how we're talking about these types of things and to respect the language that other people are asking us to use.
I mean, they're doing a very loose interpretation of Chicago, and they continue calling it Chicago. So
I'm gonna give you like a 5 Chicago use limit per episode moving forward. You only get to say the word like so many times.
You don't know how long I have wanted a character from the Midwest in the MCU. I'm taking all I can get.
I would argue that I understand that a little bit, just not with the Midwest.
Yeah,
obsessed. Something that I'm really looking forward to as I have one thought in my head, and I'm gonna put it in the private chat because I can't say this publicly. But as someone that watches PR so closely and has lived and breathed this production brief and all of the media that's come out around Moon Knight, right? As someone who takes language very seriously in that capacity, I've been very invested in the assembled specials. I know I watched them late, but since I did watch all of them and really understood their purpose as a PR tool as opposed to like, I thought it was more like bonus content, right? The same way you'd get like the DVD bonus features, and it's not. It's a PR tool to try and propel things into award season. And when you look at, particularly with the Eternals and the story they told in Eternals Assembled versus the award season pitch that they tried to give Eternals, it's like carbon copy. It is 2 same PR messages, right? So I'm really excited to see this Moon Knight Assembled special because I think we're going to see the language from the production brief around consultation and representation emulated and what they try and tell us about how they built this show. And I think it's also their chance at Marvel. I'm talking right to you now. It's also their chance to try and fill in some of these gaps of why they thought the consultants were the right choice. And I would love to hear that rationale in the Assembled special. Like, let the consultants come on, face the camera in those direction chairs you force everyone to sit in that look so stiff and brand new straight from the factory they make those chairs in, and get them to speak to why they were the right consultant and what specifically they brought to the show. I think that would be so impactful. I think it would really prove the thoughtfulness of those hires, which is something that I personally am not clear on, particularly after this episode. So I listened to everything Bunky's saying. I listened to everything Alexis is saying. I think it's really there's some really strong assumptions that we can make, and I'm like, Marvel, you have such a chance to clear the air, and if you do, it can be for the better in so many ways. So strike while the iron's hot. Like, let's see it, Kevin Feige.
And I'm also curious to hear how they talk about like the casting, because Oscar Isaac's not Jewish. As much as I don't know. I remember hearing somebody say that he's like an 8th Jewish or something. With that, that's like not how it really works. He was raised evangelical Christian. Even if he has Jewish ancestry, he himself, as a singular human person, is not Jewish. And Judaism aside, he's totally doing really well with the acting. I'm not taking that part away from him. But I'm curious to hear them talk about, or specifically him maybe, why he took this role. Knowing that he's not Jewish and knowing that Judaism is so central to Mark Spector and to, well, not really central to the story, because like we pointed out earlier, you could take it out from the story and it would be the same story, but central to the character story of the comics.
Yeah, I think to Leah's point too, it's going to be very interesting to see what messaging they go with in general in the Assembled episode, because we talked about this in, I think, the first episode. There wasn't really a lot of clear messaging in the promotion of the show other than Oscar Isaac's in the MCU. So it'll be interesting if now that, the like secrets of the show are out or whatever, if they're going to actually acknowledge any of this. Or if it's just going to be Oscar Isaac's in the MCU.
I keep seeing people talk about how like this might be Oscar Isaac's one and only appearance as Moon Knight, and whether or not that's true, I have no idea, and I'm not going to pretend that I have any idea. But the fact that they used him so strongly for the marketing makes me think that it might be his only appearance, because I have this little inkling that maybe Layla will take over the mantle. which I think would be really cool. It would also be like, oh, there goes that Jewish character.
Yes,
Why? But it would
yes.
also, outside of that, I think would be a much bigger deal than holding on to Oscar Isaac for the role. So I kind of want it to be the only time he's here. I want them to totally wring out as much Oscar Isaac marketing as they can, throw that towel away, and say, here is May, I don't remember her last name, I'm sorry, as Layla, as Moon Knight, because that would be super awesome.
Yeah, Marvel's definitely facing. Okay, someone stop me in like 3 minutes. Okay, here's a tangent
watching the
for
clock.
you. Watch the clock. Get the timer back. I already exited the timer, but I would turn it back on for myself right now. Hi, Grace. Grace is watching on TikTok, I think, or Grace is live. Anyway, sorry, eating into my 3 minutes here. I have thought from moment one of the marketing of the show that putting it on Oscar Isaac's shoulders was a risky decision. I'm the biggest Oscar Isaac girly you will find. I knew he was going to crush it. I knew it was going to be powerful. In my mind, it was like with all of the Tony Stark referencing they were doing in the run up to Moon Knight, I figured they were trying to bring in like their new leading man alongside Sam Wilson, and with all the rumors of them potentially taking out Bucky Barnes, like trying to just bring in another man's man to kind of settle a portion of the Marvel audience, right? Alexis, we lost your camera, but I think you might know that on the stream. Okay, hi. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose you to the internet or something. However, regardless of that choice being made, if they were going to go all the way with Oscar Isaac, I think there were strong moves that they have made and that they could have made, and there were some weaker moves. And one of the weaker moves that we've seen is just what I would call a social media blender, where they took this trend of like 5 reasons to watch Uncharted and they're all Tom Holland, right? And like you can make that video because it's Uncharted and it's the backstory of a video game character, and like that's one story entirely. But they remade that same concept with Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight, and to me that was so disrespectful to the story that's being told. Like it's such a gimmicky, high level, no barrier to entry way of trying to get people to watch based on an actor. But when you know the context that those scenes are being pulled from and the story that's happening with Mark Spector, I think specifically because a lot of those scenes that they took were of Mark and not so much of Steven, but both. To me, it was like, why would you play your cards this way? Because if you're going to focus on Oscar Isaac and that's going to be your play, it should be about how powerful he is, how well he's doing to create these differentiated characters and to act off of himself, right? As opposed to Oscar Isaac is hot, which is so sexualizing to me and wrong in the context of the story. Again, think about that trend in the context of like Nathan Drake and Uncharted and like video game adventure movie. And I think you can have a little bit of a different conversation about it, but like I haven't really understood the mystery that they've been trying to keep with those first 4 episodes, especially after seeing what the cliffhanger of episode 4 was, and after watching this episode, I feel like they could have told us so much more off the bat and in the marketing of the show that would have helped us understand like this is the context of the character. This is some of what we're going to see with the Egyptian culture. If they had told us in the preamble of Moon Knight, like,
your 3 minutes is up.
Okay, but now I'm not talking about Oscar Isaac. I'm talking about something different.
I know. I thought you were going to take a pause because you were like perfectly rapping and then you had to move on, and I was like,
well, I'll wrap quickly. A point to me this week that I think when I saw it, this is going back to what Alexis was saying about the scales, right? Like, to me, they should have started the show by explaining these scales. Like, imagine in the promo if they had said, oh, like this show is about like sin and evaluating your morality. Like, that would have been such an interesting way to try and get people to watch the show. You don't even have to go into the mental health and the culture. You can leave all that at the door. Just try and have a conversation about morality and superheroes. I think is so fascinating. Alexis.
No, I was just you said a couple things, and
I gave a long list.
No. It just felt important that we touch on something real quick, and that is that in the comics there's a third alter that we haven't met in the show yet, Jake. And there was a lot of speculation this week as to whether or not we have already seen Jake in the show in certain moments. I'm not particularly respectful of that move because I think they've tried to really clearly point out like Steven versus Mark, and it would feel sneaky and underhanded to be like, oh yeah, he was right there. There was also a couple moments in this episode, particularly where the dissociative switch was much better. We didn't use glass or mirrors or reflection, right? He personally had that moment. And I think that's why people are thinking, oh, well, if we're taking that kind of mirror glass moment that I disliked since the beginning out of play, then maybe there could be other moments in this where we have seen Jake. But when you were talking about Oscar Isaac and playing multiple characters in the scales, Sly and I, when we were watching it, both assumed that the issue with the scales was going to be that there was not a third heart, that the inclusion of Jake would have balanced the scales rather than one of them needing to be removed, which I think is the more controversial choice. So I didn't want the comments in like 3 weeks to be like, no, they should have known that Jake was going to happen and they didn't mention Jake. So I just wanted to.
I will say, I don't know that I believe that Jake Lockley is going to be in this show, but the scene in this episode that everybody is referencing with the little statue, that is not how you say doctor in a Chicago accent. And Oscar Isaac's Chicago accent is very good.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me very like if Oscar Isaac played Frank Castle in The Punisher.
Yeah.
I was like, why is John Bernthal here? Like, where did this come from? Which is not to say that it was like bad. I don't know how to judge any of that, but it was like I can't watch that and not see him.
Yes,
I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
I want to transition the conversation to one more point about Moon Knight here, which we haven't talked about, which is that I personally have been begging for a scrap of understanding of why Moon Knight was an important story to tell right now.
Oh,
like, give me
that's all I've been
connection.
thinking about.
Give
That's
me-
all I've been thinking about this week.
Give
Why?
me something to the MCU. Like I was understanding in many capacities the importance of Moon Knight, and I was just like, throw in a Natasha reference or do something to like make it connect. And we finally got a shred this week. I mean, we had Mad Report. Okay, I got that, but I was like, this feels like a throwaway to me because like Art Dealer, like we don't really understand the significance of that at this time. But this week we got Ancestral Plane reference, which to me was like, okay, so can we now predict that the afterlife or the realms of the afterlife are going to be significant to Phase 4 moving forward? And that's why Moon Knight was introduced at this time. That's my theory, but I want to throw it to Bunky because you have a comment here in the show doc about this, and I'm trying to find it. Hold on.
Good, because I have no idea what you're about to say.
Specifically, Bunky said, if heaven is a field of reeds, I do not want to go there. Looks itchy and hot. And I couldn't agree more. I'm like, why are all these planes they're showing fields? Like, is someone worried about bugs and like ticks? I live in the sticks. Like, I don't go into those fields. Like, you couldn't pay me to walk in there, see what you'd walk out of. Bunky, do you want to elaborate on that thought or any of this greater picture?
I mean, whenever we have discussions about like afterlife portrayal in movies and TV, I always think about The Good Place because A, obviously I love The Good Place, but B, like I feel like that had conversations about like so many different concepts of what the afterlife can be. And with the MCU just kind of being like, yeah, there's a bunch of different ones, like it doesn't matter. I want them to talk about them all like within the context of each other. And then I also had like multiple comments on TikTok this week that were like frustrated because they were like, how dare Mark Spector be Jewish when he knows that the afterlife is not a Jewish one, like that there can't be multiple sets of like gods and greater beings and all that type of religious stuff and whatever, as if the MCU hasn't done Norse mythology and Egyptian mythology and like African mythology with Black Panther and stuff like that. Like they all can coexist, but I think there needs to be something that has a conversation that like writes that down like in stone so that people stop yelling at Jewish people about it online because how dare Mark Spector be Jewish when obviously Egyptian gods are the real ones, as if we haven't been through that already.
I also feel like they tried to say something in the episode, and to me personally, when this line was said, I was like, I feel like that was not written or delivered well by, I'm sorry, I'm going to call it the hippo god because I don't remember its name, but the hippo says like, oh, you've ended up in this realm. There's so many you could pick from. And they kind of tried to play it off as this like silly thing of like, oh, you just happen to find yourself in this realm. And I was like, that's what you're going with? That's your argument here, is you happen to end up in this one after how significant it was in Black Panther to specifically go to the ancestral realm. But oh no, you can just surprise you're on the boat. Like, sorry, go ahead.
No, finish.
No, that was me. I'm done.
To go off what Bunky so brilliantly said, part of me has been a little concerned that we're going to end up in the same territory that we are with magic, where we've got 10 types of magic and we don't understand like how they all relate and what they all are. This episode made me fear a little bit that we're going to end up there in ancestral plane territory as well, where there's just a bunch of them, which is on the one hand great, but it's not so great if we don't really understand like how they all, like you said, Bunky, if there's not a direct conversation about how they interact and how they don't interact, like if we don't have that, we're kind of in territory.
And that reminds me of a text that my brother sent me earlier, which was like, I just hate that everything is canon now. He was watching What If when this conversation happened, because I told him that it's going to relate to Doctor Strange. And he was like, it's, we have that with timelines. We have that with magic. We have that with afterlives. And I feel like they needed to do one at a time. Do the multiverse or do the afterlife thing or like do the magic thing. But because we're dipping into every single one at the same time, it's incredibly difficult to follow what the heck is happening in each particular lane of this story.
I have a personal hope. I have a personal hope, but I'm also going to throw the quantum realm into the conversation here. And how does that get affected by all of these things? And how, like, I feel like Quantum Mania getting pushed up, because if you didn't know, there's a flip now or something, and we're getting Ant-Man before Miss Marvel. So I'm like, people are saying, oh, it's because Miss Marvel is like falling behind. I think it's because they need whatever explanation Ant-Man's trying to give us sooner. So go ahead.
It's not Miss Marvel, it's the Marvels.
Thank you. Oh my God.
Clarification. We're still getting Miss Marvel this year. Next year, it's Ant-Man before the Marvels. Just as a, I didn't want to cut you off. No, thank you. I'm glad you did, because that's definitely that. Imagine if they just pushed the show and okay, listen, you're all confused. We're going to give you Ant-Man right now. But this takes me back to my pitch I give every single week, which is just give us a what if episode, right? And now I have the pitch for you. So Marvel, like, take this idea and go make it happen. You have my full permission. I won't sue you. Like, okay, Professor Hulk, right? And it's like, what if he met like another professor who understands all of these things? Like, maybe it's like him from another timeline. And it's the whole episode is they sit down in a classroom with a whiteboard, like magic, boop, boop, boop. Here's how it connects. Timelines, boop, boop. And that's the whole thing. There's no conflict. There's no drama. It's just a lecture for 35 minutes explaining to us all of these plot holes. And then we move forth. It's like that that one Disney Plus series, like, oh my God, not a Marvel one. The one about Forky from Toy Story 4.
Yes.
And it's like every episode is like 5 minutes long. Like Forky asks a question or something. Something like that. I want that with like some random character from the MCU.
With Alpine.
Perfect. Give us an anthropomorphized Alpine.
We got it.
And have Alpine answer all of the questions that we so desperately need answered in order to understand what we're watching. And it's also a testament to the MCU, the fact that we're all so constantly, overwhelmingly confused about what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And we continue to watch. That's like wild to me.
I want a little Alpine that looks like Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park. That's just like, come on, where the Microsoft paperclip, like that style, like Alpine telling me stories about the logic behind the MCU.
All-knowing Alpine. That can be the name of the show. And it can
I'm
be
still pitching my children's Alpine show. I don't know how that hasn't happened yet.
True.
Alpine the cat that solves criminal disruption with mindfulness. I don't know how that's not a thing.
This comment, Alpine voiced by Hank Green. I raise you, not that, but Crash Course MCU plot holes.
I have been pitching this for
Also,
a year.
Alpine is a girl cat. We've
Yeah.
established this. Continue.
Yeah. Go ahead, Marissa. State your,
Oh,
put your flag on the moon
been,
here.
I've been pitching MCU Crash Course for a year. I think
Let's
it would
do
be
it.
really great.
Let's-
In-universe Crash Course, just Hank Green telling you the history of the Howling Commandos.
Well, let's acknowledge that Marissa posted the video that made Hank Green confirm that he's in the MCU.
That's
That
what
was
I'm
Marissa
saying.
who made that iconic moment.
Do
Right,
I not know
Bunky?
about this? What was this?
It's okay. Liz was late to find out as well.
I found out like
Yeah,
3
yeah.
weeks ago.
It's entirely possible that I saw it happen and forget, but either way, like,
Marissa, you tell the story, please.
yeah,
Share
please
with the
do. I'm
class.
curious.
Okay, I was walking down the street. I was listening to an episode of Dear Hank and John. I had just watched Ant-Man and the Wasp. And I realized in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Scott Lang is reading The Fault in Our Stars, which means John Green exists in the MCU, which means Hank Green exists in the MCU. And then I made a TikTok saying exactly that, and then Hank Green stitched it and said that means everybody exists in the MCU that watched the video. So we're all in the well, I'm in the MCU. I don't know if you guys are.
I watched that video and you do the show with us. So now by association.
Sure.
That's it. That's the
This
link.
is the MCU. This is the in-universe Crash Course, actually.
Yeah. yeah.
It kind of is, yeah.
I'm like gonna have like a Doctor Strange like portal open with like another timeline of me being like, you know too much. Like you're out.
Are we gonna
It needs
are
to
we
be
gonna
like
get
one of
to
the
talk
Watchers.
about Doctor Strange?
Yeah, let's do we feel good
Oh my
about where we're
girl.
leaving Moon Knight for this week? I mean, we don't that was not the right word. Do we feel like we've said enough?
I thought I was muted. My
No, it was a great reaction to that. I feel like, as usual, we will put the placeholder up of the conversation does not end. We're just going to move on for the sake of time, but we'll be back next week to continue. Please follow Bunky and their series where even more
Yes.
conversation is going to take place. Bunky, let's talk about Multiverse of Madness. I want to hear your thoughts on this. I think we all have thoughts. You didn't write anything in the doc, but guess
You
what?
told me I was going to get kicked off the show for this, but that's okay. I'll stay here. I
No,
love
you're
it.
here. You're here. Let's ride this together. Especially Sly's not here anyway, so you can have Sly's slot for this conversation. Sorry, Sly.
Yeah, do you want to say Sly's predictions?
Sorry, I know it's very fresh for you still, Alexis. We had some false hope that Sly just might appear. I know you're not doing so well without.
Not the way I'm checking my phone every 10 minutes.
Is Sly texting you and not the group chat?
No.
I was gonna be so
I mean,
upset.
that usually happens, but not in
I've had the group chat open the entire show, hoping Sly was gonna text. I was about to be so angry if you were getting the tea and not all of us. I was gonna say not me, but
I'm
Marissa
no
is
wife,
here too, so.
Elizabeth. I have a certain amount of privilege.
With that, let's talk about Multiverse of Madness. Speaking of wife privilege, I have a big question I'm just going to pose. We did not prep this question, but I just want to ask it. Yes or no? No explanation. Do we think White Vision's going to be in Multiverse of Madness? Hard yes from me. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Do we
Paul
do we think
is very bad at lying.
Oh, was he lying about this?
I've watched, yeah, because he's doing press for a Very British Scandal, and
Mhm.
Stephen Colbert asked him if he was on it, and he basically just said yes.
Poor Paul.
But he didn't say that White Vision was in it. He basically said that he is in it, but it might not be White Vision. It might be like alternate variant Wanda and Vision.
I can't do this.
I really hope that okay, please correct me here. Did they explain why White Vision is white? I don't think they did. So that leads. They did?
Well, it's sort of implied.
Oh.
Because he doesn't have like a soul that he doesn't
Computer.
have. He doesn't have the like regenerator doctor whatever part that makes him part human. Or I don't know. It's some part of the equation that made Vision that he doesn't have as White Vision.
Right.
That makes him more human.
Do you think he's gonna like find Wanda and then like their connection is gonna turn him pink again or red or whatever color he is, and it's gonna
I
be like
want
really
that to
cute and weird?
happen, but I think it's gonna go the comics way where he's like,
Mhm.
I don't know who you are. I can't marry you. I don't love you. And then he'll fly
But
away again.
man, I want a pink Vision now. So thank you for ruining
Well,
that
okay, here,
for me.
let me state what I was leading to with my thought here, which is that I want different. If we're opening the multiverse, okay, and there's infinite visions, I want different colored visions, but it means something's missing differently depending on what color he is. So maybe if he's
I think
green,
Sylvan is
Like
right
Inside Out.
because he doesn't have the.
yeah, okay, I
It's
don't
the
want
Mind
logic.
Stone. It's
I
not
don't-
the Soul Stone. It's the Mind Stone.
I don't
But
want to talk
think
about stones.
that's
I want to
why.
talk about like Vision not being able to cook, so he's blue, or like Vision not having a sense of humor, so he's green, or like
very like a Clark Kent being gay when the kryptonite's pink. Like we
you.
are really up against pink kryptonite territory.
It's the multiverse of madness, people. Infinite timelines. There is a timeline where Vision pops out wearing one of these jackets. Okay? Like, that's the
Oh,
one I
yeah.
want to see in this movie. Okay? This is Eros, right? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this is a Natasha variant. Has to be. Multiverse confirmed.
Sure.
I have
Absolutely.
still
I
not
have-
gotten over the fact that his video with Shania Twain reminds me so much of 911. I cannot like
That's a video you need to make.
anything that
Yeah.
he does now. I can't because the video. There's a video with Shania Twain. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent where she like rubs down his abs, and it felt so
Yeah.
like Connie Britton as Abby hitting on a man
Yes.
12 years younger than her that I could not. I was like, somewhere someone has written the Buck AU where this is a thing that happened. And I now Harry Styles is just some weird fan fiction Buck to me. I'm sorry.
To be fair, Harry Styles is a weird fan fiction person to many people in this world, so you are not alone there, bestie. I'd like to raise this comment for you specifically, Alexis. JJ says Vision as the Power Rangers,
Yes.
and we know that you are the Power Rangers expert on this show. So,
I am.
do you approve?
It's a weird thing to be in my resume.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's great.
I approve as long as we don't have to stick to Power Rangers stereotypes. Like as long as like, you know, we can kind of mix those up a little bit. I am fine with Vision being the Power Rangers. Hi, JJ.
That's a big prediction from Multiverse of Madness right there, folks. We're getting Power Rangers Vision Edition. Okay.
But I want the
do we
I
have
want
any-
the like like I want the like
Yeah,
Power
yeah, yeah.
Rangers level like choreography.
Oh, absolutely. I want Ryan Murphy himself to come in and choreograph an entire routine.
I have
don't think
so many
Ryan Murphy
feelings
is a
about the Power Rangers
choreographer.
actors. We need to move on. Move
No,
on
no, I
before offend
specifically
people.
said Ryan Murphy to choreograph it. Like, I want him.
Okay.
He'd
All
be
right.
a great consult if we're looking at the Bar Marvel set for their consult so far.
No, that's true. That's true.
Late
Yeah.
Night Liz is getting spicy.
I'm just trying to pitch CBS that I'm worth investing in, folks. If you want spice like this, get into my email. Okay, Marissa, please save me. What is your big prediction for Multiverse of Madness?
Oh, okay. Well, that is definitely 100% either Maria or Monica Rambeau. I think it's probably Maria Rambeau. Anyone that said that was not a Captain Marvel variant is discriminatory in some way. And I think something really awful and terrible is going to happen to Wanda, and she's not going to be okay after this. There is never going to be a happy ending for my girl, and I think that that's okay. She's either gonna fully, I have a slight feeling about that, or she's gonna be like terribly imprisoned in something. I haven't finished House of M. I feel like there's something in there that could be like, I don't know. There's gonna be some punishment at the end of this, I feel, because she got away with Westview. And she did nothing wrong. I will support her no matter what. But I feel like she's unhinged at this point, and there's got to be some sort of retaliation, and she's not going to be okay. And I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm also very much looking forward to it.
Bunky, you're strong agreeing with that.
I just keep thinking about this TikTok that I saw that I don't think this is like logically what's going to happen, but at the same time, how cool would it be if it did? where they said that they think it's going to end on a cliffhanger and the credits are just going to say part 2 coming out next year or something like that. Because the movie is like an hour and 45 minutes long.
The blood just rushed from my head when you said that. I swear to God, if that's what they're doing to us, and they're making it inaccessible to people with photosensitivity, I'm double fist fighting. I'm coming out swinging.
Because what I keep thinking is like
to work on your swing.
I don't even have a belt. That's how untrained I am, Alexis. There's a reason I do a show behind a camera. Okay.
Sorry, Bunky. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that like if that's what happens, then I think what Marissa's saying is also gonna like Wanda's something is going to happen in a bad way, and then it's gonna be like, see you next time, like in an Infinity War kind of way.
That might be it. I just feel like they have put Elizabeth Olsen through the goddamn ringer. I don't see any way that we're gonna see her again for a while. She went from wrapping WandaVision to the Multiverse of Madness set 3 days later, and then spent like another 5 months on this movie. I take a lot of cues from press and like, you know, general vibes of people's energy. My Marissa Tomei vibe was 100% correct for No Way Home. So I'm getting a vibe and I'm just sticking with that. But I think that would be really interesting if they banked 2 movies together. And okay.
I also think that like, I think I mentioned this like in our group chat, but I'll say it here too, is that like when like after No Way Home came out, we found out that it was supposed to originally be advertised as a like civil war between Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. And now we're seeing that with the marketing for this movie. It's Doctor Strange versus Wanda. And in normal Marvel fashion, not with No Way Home, because Sony does its own weird thing, but usually with these Marvel movies, whatever we see in the trailers is like the first 5 minutes of the movie. Like they really only give you a little bit. So I have no idea what's going to happen. Like I really don't think we know anything about this movie that we think we do, except for like the Illuminati is there, and then that will have implications. What are the implications? I just remembered that means that this could have Fantastic Four implications, and now I'm very scared.
Oh yeah, there was news about that today. Oh my God.
I have such feelings about that news too.
Bunky, you just had your wait. This is the bad place. That was you just did that live.
Yeah, but it's also that look, if we're getting any movies, I want a Fantastic Four movie, and we are getting it. And like I love the Fantastic Four for so many reasons. Movie Fantastic Fours have been less than fantastic. And if Marvel can nail a Fantastic Four movie, I will be happy for the rest of my life. And the fact that John Watts is stepping down from directing it makes me nervous, because I did think he was like the ideal director. But now we could get like a I don't know, like a Jewish director, because these are some of these characters are Jewish. Not that has to be in the movie, but you know, if we're getting a perfect Fantastic Four movie, it is in the movie. And I don't know, I just have a lot of strong feelings about that. And if Mr. Fantastic is part of the Illuminati in Multiverse of Madness, there's so many things are going on in my brain right now. Somebody else start talking.
No, I'm gonna pick up on some points here, but also go a totally different direction as per usual. Speaking of like I also think about like the timekeepers and all this big conversation about the timekeepers, and we're gonna see the timekeeper, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I'm gonna say that Cineplex, which is like the Canadian big movie chain, has spoiled and confirmed one of the people that is going to be in this movie. I'm not gonna say who it is in case you do not want to be spoiled, but confirmed there's a big Marvel player that is in this movie that we have not named in this conversation, that if you want to spoil it for yourself, you can go cineplex.com, Multiverse of Madness, and it's in the description, or in the cast description. And I checked it again last night and they still haven't taken it down. So they did the same thing with No Way Home. We knew the entire No Way Home cast 2 weeks before because of Cineplex. So it spoiled the big reveal there. But I'm going to leave that and revisit at a different time. I can't stop thinking about it, and all my thoughts are overtaken by what that implication is. To a different thought, I think we're going to see Captain Marvel in this movie. Specifically, I could imagine in like a post-credit scene, we're going to see Captain Marvel, and that's going to set up Miss Marvel, like and
Carol Captain Marvel?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, like Carol
'Cause
Danvers.
there's a lot of Captain
Yeah.
Marvels.
Yeah. Bunky, go ahead.
Okay, so because I keep remembering and then forgetting and then remembering again that in the Shang-Chi post-credits, we got Captain Marvel, Bruce
Yeah.
Banner, and Wong. Which
We sure
means,
did.
A, is Shang-Chi going to be in this movie? Is Bruce Banner going to be in this movie?
I think-
Why will they be in this movie? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, okay, Captain Marvel we can kind of see because of like if Monica or Maria shows up or what have you. But I have lots of confusion about that. And then also, if Bruce Banner was there, does this somehow connect to She-Hulk, which is my most anticipated Marvel project of the year
Yeah.
that nobody talks about ever,
It was a Jeopardy question the other night.
as it should be.
True, very true. Yeah, no, I've been thinking about that post-credit scene a lot, and I think that I'm not going to say all of my thoughts right now, but I definitely think that scene is going to like be explained or be alluded to in this movie for sure. I don't think we're going to see Bucky Barnes. I feel like every time a movie comes out, I have to say whether I think Bucky's going to be in or not. And every time I've said he's not, and he has not been. I don't think we're seeing Mr. Sebastian Stan. He's been too busy. But I would like to see him, but it's not going to happen. I need more Bucky content in my life. It's fine. I'm doing great. My last prediction for this movie is that I have a big thought that's going to be very unpopular. Would you like to hear it?
Always.
The dude bros are going to walk out and they're going to try and claim Wanda. We liked Wanda the whole time.
Yeah.
Wanda's great.
They're either going to claim Wanda or America Chavez. They're going to have to pick one.
True. Very true.
And I don't know. I don't know if I can see them doing a full 360, 180, whatever, on Wanda. But they might be like, I could see the like, well, it's not like the comics, but she is pretty badass for America Chavez.
They're gonna like Wanda if this is the last time we see Wanda.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's fair. But okay, I cannot go down that. I'll save that for if that does happen because I have a whole rant about misogyny. Alexis, I want to throw it to you because you also had this comment in your predictions that it's gonna. You think the men are gonna walk out pissed from this movie. Do you want to elaborate on that?
No, I think you said it all. But I will say that there have also been. I have to be careful with how I word this. There have also been some rumors that this movie has been banned in certain other countries that I personally am not allowed to name because of queer representation that may be in this movie. And I live in an area where white dude bros will also be pissed about that. So that was kind of the dual factor there.
That'll be another interesting lens to think about this when we think about representation, right? And the queer representation we have seen from Marvel this year, or sorry, not this year, but in Phase 4. And if you're thinking about balancing the scales, I want to throw a Moon Knight reference in here for a second. Like they've done a couple things pretty well. They've done a couple things pretty questionably. They've done a couple allusions that are kind of head scratchers, but we think we can get behind. So I'm interested to see like how does this movie come into it in terms of different consultation? What was this approach like?
Like there was oh God, was it the second or third? The second or third Star Trek movie from the new set, like 2009 onward, had a lot of like negative press and was banned in these same countries because there was the implication that two men were married and had adopted a child. We saw it on screen for all of 15 seconds. It was nothing like it was like a blink and you miss it thing. It wasn't anything that needed to be a topic of conversation anywhere, right? And this kind of has similar vibes to me, where I think this representation is getting a lot of like conversation now, but may honestly be like two women are holding hands. Dear God, what do we do? You know, that was sarcasm for the record.
America's jacket has a pride pin on it.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that, honestly.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
And
So.
let's again remember that this actress is a minor, the one that's playing America Chavez. So I think that it's really important that when you go see this movie, regardless of the thoughts that you have around that character, be careful what you decide to post online. It is not the same as critiquing other actors that like Elizabeth Olsen or Benedict Cumberbatch or the, legal adults. And I feel like I'm really nervous to see what the conversation is around the character and the story versus the portrayal and the actress. Because those are that's very different when you're talking about minors and you're talking about youth in movies and not professional adults that do this and have a different accessibility in terms of conversation. So let's also remember that when we look at this movie. Thank you for sending some roses on TikTok. That is very sweet. We're going to wrap the show here because we're a little bit over time. I want to thank Bunky for joining us this week. Thank you, Bunky. Do you want to be the first to pitch where you are in the world and where people can find you and what you're talking about?
I am most often found on TikTok at Bunky with 3 Ys because other people have my name. I am also very frequently posting on my Instagram stories.
Bunky's Instagram stories are like my favorite reality show. Like, you don't understand.
My issue with Instagram is that I never post like actual posts, but my stories are an absolute party. So if you're not there, you're really missing out.
When we decided to rename the show, we said, listen, Bunky's stories are a party. So what should we call ourselves? I'm kidding, but imagine our show being an entire brand named after how well you do on Instagram stories.
That would be quite fantastic. But yeah, those are the 2 places you can find me. TikTok and Instagram. Even though it looks like I never post on Instagram, I'm in the stories. You just have to wait for me to post them.
My order of stories that I get now, like, the most frequently viewed, it's Marissa, Bunky, Alexis, and then I'm pretty sure it's like Timothy Chalamet or something. Like, if he ever posts, like, he always moved up to the front, but I'm excited.
I overtook Timothy Chalamet?
You really did. I think it's because you post more often, but like, if Timmy's posted, it's like...
Any reason's a good reason for me. I'm honored.
Put it on your resume. Give Bunky an internship. Let Bunky run your social. More viewed than Timothy Chalamet, official by this show standards. Marissa, where can people find you this week? And what, if I had to make a guess, I would assume there might be some Wanda coming to your feed soon based on the events of the next week.
Yes. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Missabobissa. There's going to be lots of Wanda content. I will also tease here that the Doctor Strange episode of the thing where I talk about hair in the MCU is finally coming this week in the lead up to Multiverse of Madness. I'm not excited about making it, but I know that people want to see it, so I'm going to do it for you.
From the trailer as well.
I haven't decided. I haven't decided. I haven't. I don't know. There's a lot. He has a lot of hair. So
I really want you to use the trailer hair. Hi, friends. Hey, friends watching on TikTok. We are ending the show, but we will see you next Saturday night. I'm actually going to hang up the TikTok feed now. We will see you next week at 8 p.m. Eastern live on TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. Good night, everyone. Okay, let's continue now. Alexis, where can people find you this week, and what are you talking about?
I am at Alexis Blake Reads Comics all over the internet. This past week, I've been enjoying just tweeting random 911 shit out of context and hoping that the ether figures out what I'm talking about. So that's happening. Hopefully, I'll get some inspiration.
What's happening? I feel like I had no knowledge that any of that is connected to 911. I'm just like,
pretty much.
That's an interesting thing Alexis has been thinking about.
Pretty much everything I posted this week. See, what happens was I was making direct 911 tweets, and then people from the 911 fandom started following me, and it was too much pressure, and it freaked me out. So then I just started being obnoxiously vague. So that's been happening. I post about my life on Instagram, and hopefully I'll post on TikTok again soon. It's a scary.
You posted on TikTok today.
I did. Well, that was my husband's fault, but yes. But I will say, if you watch 911, come and find somewhere to talk to me about it, because everyone is getting tired. Everyone in my life is getting tired of me babbling about it, and I want to have those conversations. So come find me. I've got thoughts. We can talk about things.
We should also plug that Sly and JJ
Yes.
do a Thirsty
Thursday
Thursday live on
Thursday.
TikTok where they talk about 911 and 911 Lone Star. So you can check them out Thursday evenings. Maybe Alexis will. I know you've been banned
That's my
from the
vote.
show a few times.
Yeah, and I've now I think Sly posted something in the group chat about everyone demanding that I be on it. But I am really listen, Sly and JJ have so much knowledge that it's a little intimidating to go on and have a conversation with that great knowledge about my ridiculous 911 opinions, which are
I've
mainly
joined their live
about,
a few times with no episode knowledge and only odd
absolutely.
15-minute windows.
I
so-
mainly just have opinions about like Oliver Stark's outerwear. Okay, like these are the types of conversations I want to have, and Eddie's apartment layout that makes no sense. Anyway, someone
Find
else
Alexis
speak.
on Twitter.
Dear God,
Find
someone
Alexis
save
on
me.
Twitter. Talk about 911. I am producer Liz. You can find me everywhere at producer Liz on Twitter with 2 Z's. Here's a fun fact. This is going to be likely 2 of the busiest weeks ever for our show in terms of End of Moon Night, Multiverse of Madness, some of the big things we're planning for June. There's some
Oh
big
my
shows
God,
coming
the
down.
Met Gala. We haven't
The
even
Met
talked about what
Gala
we did
is
for the
Monday,
Met
so
Gala.
Only Murders in the Building.
Only
is getting
Murders
ready
in
to
the Building.
drop
Like,
some stuff. Yeah.
so in terms of content, like these 2, like it's been nonstop award season. Like there's right. And also in my personal life, these next 2 weeks are like, I don't know when I'm going to sleep. So if you want to see some chaotic ass content from me, it's like, the meme that's like, no sleep, bus, club, another club. That's me. Like, come ride the chaos train with me on TikTok and Instagram specifically. Something fun that we did this week was Gossip Night on my Instagram stories, where I just posted a box and you all told me what you wanted me to unpack. I really love doing that because sometimes I realize that there's things that I'm caught up on that other people maybe don't understand or have context for. We talked a lot about Taylor Swift and the re-recordings and some of the drama that went down at CinemaCon. So if you want to unpack some of the weekly gossip that we don't talk about here on the show, we're going to do that every week on my Instagram stories. And it's just when my Instagram stories decide to post, it's a really fun way to talk to you all. So we will keep that up over the next week as well. And we should plug Sly. We should always plug Sly. If Sly's here, Sly's not here. If Sly ever leaves the show, we'll still plug Sly every week. Sly is at SlyCloneMC and Point in Progress all over the internet. You can watch MC University. You can talk about 911 and 911 Lone Star. This is also Alexis's husband, so back off. What else should we say about Sly? Jane
I am
Austen.
a little bit of a jealous wife. Just a smidge, but I will say the MC University episode of Fantastic Four is fantastic. So for people trying to like get knowledge about that in
heading into
preparation for
Multiverse of
anything that
Madness.
happens with Multiverse of Madness, go watch that one.
Sweet. And I will say, when I find out what is up with this photosensitivity piece of the puzzle, I'll post it everywhere. So if you're also looking for those answers, or you saw my video and you're waiting for a follow-up, I'll make a follow-up with what I learn. I'll make a spoiler version and a non-spoiler version, depending on the info that we get. So if you're waiting on that, I'll post it whenever I learn it, because I would love to go see this movie, but also I might not be able to see this movie. And listen, if I had to watch Spider-Man from a potato pixel quality, I'm sure I can figure out the same for Multiverse of Madness. I'm also sure that Marissa will tell me the movie detail for detail in like 2 hours worth of voice messages, if that's what's really needed here. So, Marissa,
That's
are
my
you
favorite?
will you commit publicly to explaining this movie to me in detail if needed?
Absolutely. I did it for Alexis with No Way Home. I did it for several people with No Way Home. My favorite thing is spoiling movies. I'm terrible at keeping secrets.
She really is. She's the best because I don't like to go into anything blind. So it's like, Marissa, give me a beat by beat of this entire thing I'm about to watch.
So if you watch Multiverse of Madness and you just need someone to talk to about it, then Marissa is your person to talk to.
I'm not seeing it until Friday, though. So don't talk to me about it on Thursday.
Yeah,
I can take your Thursday slot if need be.
Bunky. Okay,
Yes,
Thursday
please
slot's
do.
Bunky. Friday slot Marissa.
Especially if Magneto is in it, I will not be able to not talk about it.
Yeah.
So
Listen,
But I don't
my
know.
DMs, y'all came through with No Way Home because my DMs about Andrew Garfield and Zendaya, people were like,
Oh,
Liz,
yeah.
watch the movie.
I forgot
Please,
about
for the
that.
love of God.
Yeah.
People were coming out of the woodwork that like I hadn't spoken to in months, being like, watch the movie, Liz. So please
It
do
was
that to
painful.
Bunky. It was hilarious. I loved it. We should say next Saturday night, we'll talk a little bit about Multiverse of Madness, but we won't go into spoilers because we know it takes a week or so for people to see the movie. So don't come into our live next week with all your spoilers in the comments. Don't be that person. We'll get through 1 week and then we'll have a big old conversation when everyone's been able to see it, okay? And until then, enjoy this week of huge content that we have coming down the pipeline. Buckle up. You know, make some popcorn. We'll be unpacking it live as the week goes on, and we'll throw the after party next Saturday night. Thank you, Bunky, for being our special guest. Sly will be back next week. And from all of us here, good night, everyone.
Like, comment, and subscribe.